I have created scientific magic. This video is purely for entertainment and does not infringe on copyrights or laws. The rights to the novel and image belong to the original author. We do not claim ownership. Don't like waiting and want to listen to this fanfic in full now? Subscribe to our Patreon, where you'll find the best fanfics. Chapter 601. Believe me, they are just a vulnerable planetary civilization. Great Moon God, I beg you to wake up from your endless sleep. Lord, please send down divine punishment and burn these blasphemers to death. In the universe, unknown galaxies, and in a spaceship on the moon, the intermittent cries of believers gradually reached Ella's head. Because of the arcane locks that restricted her and closed time and space, her connection with these believers was also greatly affected. She could only feel the thoughts of the believers at the moment of death. Recently, the frequency of believers' deaths has obviously increased. From the cries of these believers at the last moment, Ella also extracted some useful information, that is, the wizards have begun to consciously uproot their beliefs in the kingdom and hunt down the devout believers who are still loyal to them. Have you noticed the source of your power? Ella thought to herself that she had set a trick on the other side when the Wizard Council went to war with the gods of the main world before, so it was normal to be targeted. However, the current situation is obviously very bad. If she loses the help of her believers, the possibility of her escaping on her own will become very small. Now her only hope is the soul that she left in the main world. If she can successfully cooperate with those gods, she will have a chance of freedom. Complex thoughts flashed through Ella's mind, and then she continued to accumulate strength bit by bit. The death of a large number of believers restored her almost dried up divine power a little. Although it is not known whether there will be another chance to escape, it is particularly important to restore strength at any time. Ella, who was closing her eyes and silently waiting for the opportunity, suddenly sensed that someone had stepped into the power room. Her eyes immediately opened. After seeing the person clearly, she couldn't help but frown, because the one who stepped into the power room was Lin En. Ella's heart sank to the bottom of the valley. Could it be that the other party noticed that she was accumulating power, so he planned to deprive her of it completely? But this idea was rejected the next moment. After the other party came in, he did not intend to take action, but scanned the bound self with a scrutinizing look, and there was a trace of satisfaction in his eyes. The moon god could not help but frown. She was indeed a prisoner now, but she had accumulated some self-destructive power. After scanning the circle, Lin En spoke coldly. I am here to remind you, Ella, the spacecraft will have a long journey next. You'd better be more obedient. If I find out that you are doing something secretly again, then there is no need for you to exist. The extremely obvious threat made Ella feel extremely humiliated. Her face turned pale and she stared at the wizard in front of her. But she swallowed the harsh words. She knew very well that she would be the only one who would suffer if she annoyed the other party. Lin En raised her hand at this time, and more arcane chains surged up one after another, strengthening the protection. Ella did not resist in vain, which made Lin En more sure that the manipulation of the power of faith that she had made was not discovered by the other party. After confirming this, Lin En stopped pretending to test it. He strengthened the protection again, completely isolated Ella from exploring the outside world, and then removed the entire power room from the spacecraft. Then he took the power room back to the giant projector located in the sky of the Eternal Star. This giant projector began to be built more than 2 years ago. The bottom was applied with anti-force field magic, which enabled it to float in the air. The wizards and the parliament who were unaware of this were very interested in it, and various rumors continued, but in fact this place was an experimental site for advanced technology. The entire projector was 5 kilometers long and was divided into dozens of sections. Each section was a simple small spacecraft. If the spacecraft designers of the Institute had any new ideas, they would usually conduct experiments on it first, collect accurate data, and ensure that it was correct before installing it on the new spacecraft. It can also be used to experiment with the impact of ultra-high speed on the atmosphere. Now Lin En plans to use this thing to send Ella to the sky. Speaker Dennis, has the transformation work been completed? Lin En stepped into the projector and saw Dennis and others who were doing the final debugging work. Almost done. The previous tests went very smoothly. If nothing goes wrong, It won't be a problem to continue sailing for half a year," Dennis said confidently, and then introduced the internal transformation of this small spacecraft to Lin En. First of all, the weapon system was removed, and only the protection, propulsion and communication devices were retained. In addition, there was no need to carry people, so the space was compressed to the extreme, and the energy consumption was greatly reduced, meeting the needs of long-distance voyages. At the same time, he also made a front and rear separation device according to Lin En's instructions. "What about the light curtain problem? Is it solved?" Lin En asked again. In the process of ultra-high-speed driving before, because the speed of the spacecraft was faster than light, the information flow carried by the light was compressed, and it looked like a series of chaotic light spots. "Half of it has been solved," Dennis said helplessly. "The communication device carried on this small spacecraft is the latest experimental product. Aurora has improved the light and shadow projection magic. Now it will no longer be like before. Finally, the image will be transmitted back through quantum entanglement to achieve the purpose of communication. The only disadvantage is that there will be some delays, and it is possible to lock the target with incomparable precision." Lin En nodded. It was good enough to solve the light curtain problem in such a short time. Even if there were some shortcomings, it didn't matter. They were not going to fight an interstellar war. It was enough to convey the information back, then install this thing. Lin En patted the floating power room behind him and placed it in the groove specially left on the spacecraft. After Dennis made some adjustments and confirmed that it was correct, he pulled the start switch. The runes on the outside lit up one by one, after a few seconds of accumulation. This simple spaceship with a height of only more than 10 meters disappeared directly in front of everyone. The speed was so fast that even Lin En could only see a trace of afterimage. "Fly, Ella," Lin En muttered silently in his heart. What they needed to do next was to wait. According to the coordinates of those alien fleets, it would take 3 months to reach the Eternal Star, which is about 0.3 light-years, and this simple spaceship will approach the other party at 1.5 times the speed of light, which means they will meet in just over a month, at 7 times the speed of time. Even if the gods of the main world choose to cooperate with the incarnation released by Ella, they should not be able to launch a large-scale invasion in 4 or 5 days. In the second spiral arm of the universe, 15 huge disc-shaped warships quickly passed through the stellar dust cloud known as Corda. As early as 100 atomic hours ago, the Archon of the Isosceles Triangle main ship with a spire-like appearance had already woken up from his deep sleep. It will take a long time for them to reach their target location, but space travel itself means risks. Some powerful civilizations can even extend their protection network to extremely distant areas. Now they have entered the warning range of most galaxy-level civilizations and may be attacked at any time. "How is the rough observation of that galaxy going? Have you found anything?" The Archon looked at the long monitor on the side, communicating with the external electromagnetic waves. The so-called rough observation is to decipher the information carried by the light received by the spacecraft. The farther the distance between the two sides, the more vague the information, and the closer the distance, the clearer the information, and even a clear and complete image can be constructed. The only problem is that the information carried by these lights comes from the past and lacks timeliness. "Mr. Archon, from the observed scene, it should be just a planetary civilization that is incapable of long-distance voyages," the monitor answered confidently. "The mother star divides the cosmic civilization into levels 1 to 9. Among them, the first 3 levels are planetary civilizations. As the name suggests, they can only operate on the mother star where they were born. The classification criteria are whether intelligent life has been born, whether they have perfect fusion technology, whether they have completed the transformation of planets in the system, whether they have the ability to travel in the universe, etc. From the results of observation, the other party does not even meet the standards of the second-level civilization. First of all, there are no signs of large-scale transformation of the planets in the galaxy, which can rule out the possibility that the other party has interstellar colonization technology. Secondly, the light emitted by the star has not weakened at all, which means that the other party does not have the ability to use this huge energy source, which will cause such obvious waste. Third, The process of receiving and deciphering the information carried in the light is extremely smooth. For those civilizations that are proficient in and use electromagnetic wave technology, such omissions will never occur, because there are too many technologies to prevent information from leaking. From the observation, the target civilization poses no threat at all. The long monitor said contemptuously, "Don't forget, our exploration fleet was destroyed there." The adjutant beside him couldn't help but remind him, this kind of rough observation can only be used as a limited reference, because some civilizations will deliberately modify the information carried in the electromagnetic waves. For example, one of their exploration fleets once reported that a certain airspace that looked like nothingness was actually a highly developed civilized world. A civilization with such a technological level would never be unable to hide its coordinates. The monitor retorted, "There are many factors that can destroy the exploration fleet, such as space turbulence and a sudden cosmic storm. After all, the exploration fleet is equipped with technology from the last era, and it is possible that it cannot afford these cosmic disasters." The Archon also did not think that the other party's technological level could reach such a level. It seemed that their operation this time should be very smooth. However, the next moment, a message marked as urgent was transmitted from the detector projected in front. An attack beyond their prediction range has arrived. Chapter 602. This is impossible. It completely violates the laws of mechanics. A strong alarm sounded in the warship. The geometry starman, who was discussing how to deal with this low-level civilization, immediately became solemn, and a glow of alertness appeared around him. What happened? Is it cosmic turbulence or a large-scale meteor shower? The Archon asked seriously. No, neither. It is a civilization with obvious signs of transformation, and it is approaching at a very fast speed. The monitor transmitted electromagnetic waves at a very fast speed. Judging from the path, there is a 90% chance that it comes from the indigenous civilization we are about to reach. Very fast? The Archon paused. Did you detect it? How fast is it? At the same time, the monitor also received detailed information from the detector, and colorful lights appeared around him, which was a sign of confusion in his consciousness. After a long time, he replied with intermittent transmission, "It is 1.5 times the speed of light." This answer made everyone in the interstellar battleship fall into silence and shock, and colorful lights began to appear on everyone. This is impossible. Could it be that there is something wrong with the detection? A long geometric star was the first to send out a questioning message. The speed of light is the upper limit of the speed that the current universe can accommodate. How could a planetary civilization that has not even completely occupied its own galaxy create a creature with a speed of 1.5 times the speed of light? Just when some crew members were in doubt and panic, the monitor suddenly spoke again. Wait, it doesn't seem to be heading completely towards us. If they continue to fly along the opponent's path, they will be separated by 3 atomic hours. Hearing this, the Archon breathed a sigh of relief, and the colorful flashing light on his body quickly subsided. Perhaps this was not a creation of the natives of the target planet, but a detector of a higher civilization that just accidentally passed by that galaxy and happened to pass here. Wait, it suddenly turned again. The electromagnetic waves emitted by the detector became stronger and stronger, which also meant that his emotions were extremely excited. This is unreasonable. This is impossible, because according to the information sent back by the detector, the metal creation completed a 120-degree obtuse turn without any deceleration, and the speed increased again during the whole process. This is completely against the common sense of mechanics. After all, the force is mutual. No matter what kind of thruster is used, when turning or changing direction, the speed will inevitably decrease significantly, and the other party actually maintains superluminal movement throughout the whole process, drawing a perfect arc in the void. No, the monitor suddenly thought of a thruster that might be able to do this, but before he opened his mouth, an electromagnetic wave was transmitted first. It's the curvature engine technology. The one who spoke was the Archon, and his body was full of fear, and it was getting stronger and stronger. This fear spread throughout the spacecraft like an infectious disease. Everyone knew what the curvature engine represented. It was a technology that the top scientific researchers in the mother world were working hard to study and had not yet been fully publicized, but the other party could already use it skillfully. A square geometric star was even more terrified. Trap. This is a trap. When he received the coordinates, he suspected that there was a trick. After all, after such a long time, the missing exploration fleets suddenly sent a message, which was abnormal no matter how he thought about it. The only explanation is a bait, a trap to lure them over. How far is it from us? Has this metal object started to slow down? The Archon sent a message anxiously. No, it's speeding up, and it's still speeding up. The monitor replied in horror. Attack. Attack immediately. The Archon ordered with the maximum electromagnetic wave without hesitation. At such a close distance, the other party still showed no signs of slowing down, and even accelerated again, which meant that it could never be a peaceful exchange and negotiation. Then there was only one possibility left, that the other party was here to destroy them. And with the navigation speed at a disadvantage, they didn't even have the possibility of escaping. Strong electromagnetic wave signals were sent out, and 15 disc-shaped warships immediately opened the launch port of the spacecraft. The dark black dots quickly condensed in the void, and then the dot began to gradually expand. 1,000 atoms exploded violently after a second, turning into strong beams of light from all directions, bombarding the unknown metal object. This is the super weapon that can destroy a planet in an instant. Star Destroyer. On the other side, in the Eternal Star, in the Parliament's combat command room, a group of speakers and senior members gathered here, because according to Lin En's estimation, the simple spacecraft they launched would meet the alien fleet in the next few days. Everyone was waiting for the arrival of this final moment. To some extent, whether the plan went smoothly would directly determine the fate of this planet. However, this nervous mood did not last long, because the process was too boring. For several days, the images uploaded from the light screen did not change at all, and it was difficult to even see a free cosmic meteor in the field of vision. Lin En did not relax his vigilance because of this. On the third day of their surveillance, the two sides found several man-made objects that were clearly different from meteorites and natural debris at a distance of about 1 billion kilometers. And a few seconds later, these things that were about 10 meters in size and should be detectors rushed towards the direction of the spacecraft. It seems that we have been discovered. Vittorio's expression immediately became solemn. It was a pity that they did not carry weapons on the spacecraft, otherwise they could destroy them. It doesn't matter, these detectors are too slow, Lin En said calmly. He deliberately removed the weapons system of the spacecraft for a reason. First, the weapons on the spacecraft were not high-end enough. The other party had mastered antimatter technology for a longer time than them and should be more comprehensive. There was no need for scattered neutron cannons. This was completely plagiarism. Taking it out would only make the other party laugh and lower the enemy's judgment of their strength, thus creating doubts. The second was that the encumbrance was removed, which could maximize the speed and flexibility. Lin En knew very well where their advantage was. That was the ultra-high speed brought by the control of high-dimensional space. Since the speed of light is the limit of the speed of low-dimensional space, it is difficult for energy weapons or material weapons to reach the same level as the spacecraft in terms of speed. As long as they cannot be concentrated, no matter how powerful they are, it is meaningless. Lin En, who advocates the theory of speed advantage, has undoubtedly brought it to the extreme. Since he has been discovered by the other party, there is no need to save energy. The alchemy array set up on the spacecraft began to frantically draw Ella's divine power, and the speed was further increased, reaching a terrifying 1.7 times the speed of light. Those detectors that tried to approach the obstruction were left behind in such a fast speed. Lin En had only one goal, which was to get the spacecraft to the closest place to the alien fleet, and then open the two time and space gates. Preferably to throw some warships in. If nothing unexpected happened, Ella's incarnation in the main world should have reached a cooperation with the gods in those main worlds. Now the disk spacecraft has become their symbol. If this fleet suddenly appears in the main world, it will inevitably be attacked. The attacked alien fleet will also be on high alert, and the possibility of a direct fight between the two sides is very high. It's almost time. Lin En stood up and sent out an electromagnetic communication. In the prisons of the kingdom, the wizards who had been prepared at all times executed all the believers of the moon god who were detained in the prison. The whole execution process was very simple. Fire magic had been set up in each prison, so more than 300,000 believers of the moon god died almost at the same time. The huge power of faith quickly crossed the barriers of time and space and was transmitted to Ella's godhead. Ella, who was struggling to hold on because of the continuous withdrawal of divine power, felt the taste of abundant divine power for the first time the next moment, and eased from the state of being drained. Almost without any hesitation, Ayla took advantage of this increased power and began to attack the cage that bound her. Although she didn't understand what happened, so many believers died at the same time, which made Ayla smell a conspiracy. A bright moon rose in the power room, and the chains that bound her body began to tremble violently. However, Ayla, who was using all her divine power, was horrified to find that her power had lost control. A divine power of the same origin but extremely unfamiliar broke out in her godhead. When the distance between the two sides was only 1,000,000 kilometers, and the 15 Star Destroyer cannons were ready to go, the entire spacecraft began to twist and disintegrate, and a crack was torn in time and space. So fast? Riv looked at Lin En and was a little surprised. Didn't he say that he would wait until he got close to the fleet before taking action? No, that's not what I meant. Lin En frowned slightly. He just used the backup plan that the Light Priesthood had laid in the moon god faith to stop Ella's resistance, so that he could open the portal between the two realms as soon as necessary. Then there was only one possibility left, that the main world took the lead in opening the passage between the two realms with the help of Ella's incarnation. They actually thought of the same thing. Seeing the space-time crack expanding rapidly, a terrifying shadow of thunder appeared in the reality, and Lin En's frown relaxed again. It is not a bad thing to put the battlefield in this universe. Chapter 603. Our enemies may be civilizations from higher dimensions. The divine power was boiling, the divine nature was twisting, and the divine body was melting. In just a few breaths, Ella, the god of the moon, fell in extreme unwillingness, and a powerful energy wave immediately erupted in the vast universe. Under the terrible energy provided by the fall of a god, the channel between the two universes was opened. A dark crack first appeared in the void, and then it quickly expanded, and the terrifying thunder immediately emerged from the inside. The god of thunder and war, Harriet, soon descended into the universe, and at the moment of invasion, he sensed the difference in this world. Big. It's so big that the boundary is almost invisible in the high-dimensional vision. At this moment, Harriet realized that he was not descending into an ordinary large plane, but most likely a huge world that could be compared with the void where the main world is. A trace of fanaticism and ambition suddenly condensed in Harriet's heart, but the next moment it was replaced by a strong sense of crisis. 15 rounds of Star Destroyer arrived at the speed of light, locking onto the target from all directions. It only takes 3.5 seconds to cross a distance of 1,000,000 kilometers at the speed of light, and when they descended, the Star Destroyer had already started. Is this the war weapon of those wizards? The god of disaster also saw the light of destruction coming towards them, as well as the disc-shaped creations farther away. This time, a god was used as a sacrifice to open the portal between the two worlds, and the energy that could be accommodated was very huge, so naturally there were more than just hairy gods descending into this universe. There were also 5 gods, including flame, disaster, sky, order, and space. The lineup was very luxurious. Based on the information extracted from the memory of the moon god, they naturally knew those disc-shaped alchemical creations. The wizards were weapons. It seems that those wizards were not unprepared. The god of disaster thought that their surprise attack could catch the other party off guard, but who would have thought that the other party actually launched the attack first? As for the oncoming light of destruction, although it exuded an extremely powerful aura, the god of disaster did not care. He could not take it, but it did not mean that other gods could not. The god of space, Nessus, took the lead. Under the high-dimensional vision, the curvature of the surrounding space began to distort rapidly, As a god with powerful divine power and the controller of the laws of space, it was he who used the residual soul of Ella to locate the position of the universe. The 15 flying, Star Destroyer cannons soon sank into the transformed void. However, the god of space, Nessus, soon discovered that the power contained in these energy beams was beyond his imagination. Nessus wanted to bounce these attacks back, but found that he could not do it at all. In the end, he could only settle for the next best thing. Under the surge of powerful divine power, the originally straight path began to distort and deform under the influence of the curvature of space. Among them, the 3 closest, Star Destroyer cannons, collided with each other, and the 5, Star Destroyer cannons, on the periphery deviated from the path. The face of Nessus, the god of space, was very ugly. He could only barely block half of it with all his strength. He was the god of space, not the god of time and space. The priesthood of time was separated separately, so he was only powerful but not a great god. There were still flaws in his control of space. When the other 7, Star Destroyer cannons, were 100,000 kilometers away from them, Harry made a move. As his palms moved, terrifying thunder emerged in the dark and empty universe, constructing an electromagnetic area that spread over tens of thousands of kilometers. Detonating these Star Destroyer cannons in advance, the superboundary energy gathered together burst out instantly, and the terrifying power directly triggered the quantum tide. However, under the layers of weakening of electromagnetic force, it did not really affect the gods 100,000 kilometers away. But even so, they still felt the threat of death. If their real bodies were hit by this thing, they would most likely fall directly, and the possibility of survival was very small. Only Harry was not afraid at all. One of his purposes in entering this plane was to find a qualified opponent and build a crown of glory with war and the blood of the enemy. Moreover, the power displayed by the opponent did not exceed the scope of his response. The ability to control thunder is undoubtedly the best among all the priests, because this electromagnetic force exists everywhere in the universe, so even if he stepped out of his own divine domain, his power did not decline significantly. My name is Harry, the Lord of Thunder and War, the conqueror of the plane, the great god. Harry made an arrogant declaration, and countless incandescent light spots flew out from the electromagnetic network that spread over tens of thousands of kilometers. The so-called light spots are just the result of observation from the macroscopic perspective of the universe. In fact, each light spot is a 5-meter-high energy beast. They are the creations of divine power, the embodiment of thunder, and the pioneers of war. The Geometry Star people on the battleship saw all of this. The fact that the Star Destroyer was blocked was secondary. What really shocked them was that the shipboard optical computer did not analyze what means the other party used to achieve space and electromagnetic force control. This means that the technology used by the other party is beyond the scope of the current technological reserves of the mother world. As for Harry's roar, they naturally heard it, but they did not understand it. Even with the current technology of the mother planet, at least 500 different words are needed to ensure that the low-level encrypted language system is cracked. According to the detection, the space around those unique life forms has shown different distortions, and the images transmitted back from the detector are completely inconsistent with the ordinary three-dimensional perspective structure. The adjutant on the side reported anxiously, with colorful lights flashing constantly on his body, and the postures of the gods descending were displayed on the light screen in front of him. This is a 4-dimensional creature, and our enemy is a civilization from a higher dimension. A lone crew member guessed in fear. From the short first contact, the other side has demonstrated high-end technology such as curvature engine, superluminal travel, wormhole technology, and the creation of intelligent energy creatures, and can use some unknown technology to directly manipulate space and electromagnetic force. This is undoubtedly the worst guess. A true high-dimensional civilization is definitely not something they can contend with. Not necessarily, it may just be some special 4-dimensional war weapon. The executive officer refuted the transmission. For example, the exploration fleet once reported a powerful civilization outside the distant star field. Most of the energy of the galaxy was used to create a group of intelligent light quantum creations to deal with interstellar wars. but they are still not a true high-dimensional civilization. They just go further than them in the study of dimensions and energy. Chapter 604, Facing an opponent whose technological level may far exceed that of the mother planet. Whether to continue the war or surrender immediately is a question worth pondering. However, the opponent has already made a choice for them. The large number of energy beasts rushing out of the electromagnetic zone is a declaration of war. The executive officer also made a decision quickly, since the opponent has a technological advantage, deliberately revealed the coordinates to lead them into this trap, and send such a powerful four-dimensional war weapon. It is definitely with great malice. So they can only choose to continue this war, show the power of their own civilization, and at the same time test the strength of the other civilization. As long as they show their powerful destructive power and war potential, even if they are defeated in the end, the mother world will not fall into an absolute disadvantage in the next possible negotiations. War. Continue the war. The executive officer sent a very firm message. In the current situation, it is impossible to wait for the leaders to finish their discussion and then issue orders. Every minute and every second determines the survival of these 15 warships and the mother world. At the same moment the order was issued, the bottom of the disk warship cracked open, and tens of thousands of 10-meter-sized, oddly shaped, sentinels, flew out of it. This is the war creation of the geometry civilization, usually responsible for intelligence exploration, close-range raids, and planetary occupation. Since the mass of a single sentinel is not worth mentioning compared to a warship, it can be accelerated to 99% of the speed of light, and is extremely flexible. When necessary, it can even detonate the gravity bomb inside, which can destroy the surrounding airspace of thousands of meters at a high-dimensional level. In fact, the geometry civilization is not without any research on dimensions. On the contrary, this is a technology that researchers in the mother world focus on conquering, and the gravity bomb is one of the results. If we use low-end nuclear technology as an analogy, then the gravity bomb is a miniaturized hydrogen bomb, and the curvature engine is the application technology of mastering nuclear fusion. On the other side, in the combat meeting room of the capital of the Eternal Star, a group of speakers and senior counselors looked at the flashing light screen in front of them with both nervousness and excitement. In the void, a large number of sentinels fought with energy beasts, and terrifying high-energy rays swept out continuously, destroying all the thunder beasts in the entire area. But in terms of high-end combat power, the advantage of geometric civilization became extremely weak. Under the dimensional control of Nessus, the god of space, and the electromagnetic control ability of Heri, the great god, 3 warships were soon hit by the burst of thunder guns. Under the ultra-high temperature of tens of billions of degrees, they were dismembered into the most basic microscopic particle form. The weakest god of fire also became the first god to fall. He was hit by a star destroyer, and drowned in the destructive light that could destroy a world. The powerful power caused a group of congressmen to exclaim again and again, "I have to say, this is much better than the movie." Being able to watch this great war at such a close distance is also due to Lin En's new priesthood of lies. The crude spaceship they launched was divided into 2 cabins. The front cabin was used to trap Hela and raid the enemy fleet, and the rear cabin was separated when Lin En decided to make a suicide spaceship charge. This thing has 2 functions. The first is to broadcast the battle situation in real time for them, and the second is to provide coordinates when necessary, so that they can take advantage of the situation and clean up the mess. Before, Lin En was a little worried whether this cabin disguised as the wreckage of the galaxy would be discovered. After all, there was nothing around. But now it seems that his worries were in vain, because the 2 sides fought directly, and the battle was very fierce. They had no intention of caring about what was strange about a meteorite hundreds of thousands of kilometers away. It was like a grain of sand suddenly appeared on the smooth ground. Although it was abrupt, it had to be carefully searched with full concentration to be discovered. In addition, Lin En added the camouflage ability of the priesthood of lies to this cabin, hiding the magic and energy fluctuations, making it even more difficult to find. Compared to most of the congressmen who were already immersed in the tense and exciting interstellar war, Irv and Vittorio were weighing the power comparison between the two sides with solemn expressions. First of all, there were the gods from the main world. The most powerful one was undoubtedly the god who could control the power of thunder. He not only wiped out 3 galaxy-level warships with electromagnetic force, but also directly blocked the scattered neutron cannon fired by the main ship at close range. You must know that according to the reference object for speed measurement, the speed of these neutron cannons has reached the speed of light, and the mass is also larger. The power is more than 10 times stronger than the weapons carried on the spacecraft intercepted by the Parliament. If it hits the Eternal Star, it is enough to turn the planet they depend on into a sieve until it completely collapses. The power of the other gods who descended was much weaker. For example, the weakest god of fire was frozen by a cooling ray, lost the ability to dodge, and finally died under the Star Destroyer. In addition, these alien spaceships also have a unique dimensional technology that can enable warships as big as a city to teleport. The largest main ship relied on this technology to avoid the ultra-large electromagnetic field created by the Thunder God. However, Lin En guessed that this technology should have some insurmountable defects, such as excessive energy loss, distance restrictions, and inability to accurately locate, otherwise, it should be used more frequently. I just don't know who will win this war. Herod smacked his lips. Judging from the current situation, the result is not easy to say. The power displayed by both sides made Herod secretly shocked. The 6 gods who descended were only the vanguards of the main world. The fleet that appeared in front of them might also be the full power of the alien civilization. It was hard to say whether it was 1/10. But both showed a powerful force that was enough to destroy the Eternal Star several times. Fortunately, Lin En had a sudden idea and made a big show, making both sides mistakenly think that the other side was their enemy and fought directly. It can only be said that the Parliament still has too few high-end combat forces. There is only one spaceship that can achieve superluminal travel, and now it has been downgraded with the fall of the moon god Ella. Lin En is the only god-level combat force. Even in his own divine domain, it is impossible to defeat 6 gods and an entire space fleet. I think it is likely that the gods of the main world will be able to win. The time-space gate has not stopped operating. As time goes by, perhaps more powerful beings will descend into this universe. We should probably find a way to close the time-space gate to balance the power comparison between the two sides. Aurora said with a little concern. For the Parliament, the best result is that both sides will suffer losses. They don't want to see any party win completely. Lin En shook his head and refuted. Don't forget, these unknown alien creatures also master wormhole technology. Moreover, for any technological civilization, the most advanced technologies are in the laboratories. Due to material supply, technical barriers and the most critical cost issue, they cannot be used in conventional wars. Most of the technologies that can be deployed on a large scale are several generations behind. So now it's just an appetizer, and the war will most likely continue to escalate. This is what Lin En hopes to see. The destruction of a fleet and the death of several gods are insignificant. Only greater casualties can make both sides fearful. Chapter 605, Dimensional Trap and the Fall of the Gods. In the vast universe, unknown galaxies, and the second candle ever, an extremely tragic galaxy war is taking place. Although there is no vibration of gas molecules in a vacuum to transmit sound waves, it can only be transmitted through more complex means such as electromagnetic waves. But various high-energy rays, spacecraft wreckage, and the aftermath of war weapons still show the horror of this silent war vividly. Even though it is hundreds of thousands of kilometers away, the cabin disguised as a space meteorite is inevitably affected, and the images sent back become stuck. The war between the two sides has entered a white-hot stage. The god of disaster, who looks like the Moko people, immediately aimed at the 2 disk warships that failed to escape the magnetic bombing. With a flick of his finger, an extremely strange magic power has enveloped them at the high-dimensional level. Disaster is a very strange concept, and all disasters and misfortunes can be summarized in it. If it is on a planet, the god of disaster only needs a thought to cause landslides and tsunamis, tear the earth apart, and magma erupts. Even if it is the divine domain of other gods, it is no exception. In the void of the universe, This power is undoubtedly limited. It's not that there are no disasters in the universe, but the power of the god of disaster is not enough to easily trigger them. Fortunately, this does not mean that he has no means. Silently, under the baptism of magnetic bombardment, the energy shield that was about to reach its limit directly exploded, and the solid shell of the spacecraft began to show signs of corrosion. The optical brain continued to issue warnings, and the geometric stars in the spacecraft were even more horrified, because the attack was very strange and did not belong to any technology they knew, and this was just a prelude to the attack. When the energy coating of the spacecraft's shell was destroyed, misfortune fell on every geometric star. The long geometric star was twisted into a twist without warning, and blue body fluids gushed out from everywhere. In a short moment, hundreds of geometric stars in the huge ship turned into twisted mummies. Everything will decay, whether it is physical or spiritual. This is the doom that any living being has to encounter. In a flash, only a shell of 2 warships with a diameter of more than 5 kilometers was left, floating disorderly in the void of the universe, and all the people inside were dead. But the god of disaster obviously missed one thing. This kind of interstellar warship does not completely require human control. After confirming that all the people inside have died, the shipboard optical computer suddenly started the 2 spacecraft for the last dimensional jump, which landed directly on his face. Almost at the same time, the power room was immediately detonated, and the energy of tens of tons of positive and negative matter stored inside was fully released. The god of disaster had no time to react and was involved in the surrounding airspace of tens of thousands of kilometers. This galaxy-level battle lasted less than an hour. The weaker gods of fire, disaster, and sky had all fallen one after another, and the other side had also lost a full 9 galaxy-level warships. The powerful and strange magic of the gods has caused the fleet of the geometry civilization a lot of trouble. It is difficult to deal with it because of the unknown. Once the energy shield is broken, even for a moment, the ship will be destroyed and the people will die. However, the same is true for the other side. 3 of the 6 gods who descended directly fell, leaving only the most powerful god of thunder and war, Heri, the god of space, Nessus, and the god of order. Although the gods who descended also cooperated with each other and occasionally helped each other to block the enemy's attacks, they basically fought each other. On the other side, it was different. Under the coordination of the shipborne optical computer, they cooperated closely with each other. After defeating them one by one, the balance of the war was reversed. After experiencing the initial panic and fear, the Archons soon realized that the enemy was not as terrible as they imagined, and they could still barely cope with it. The shipborne optical computer soon analyzed that the other party used a brand new energy that had never been discovered before. It seems that the information sent back by the exploration fleet is not all false. Sir Archon, we just received a message from the Mother World. The leader asked us to activate the coordinates immediately. The monitor excitedly communicated. Hearing this, the crew members in the main ship were all very excited. This meant that their support was coming. The Archon was also relieved. It seemed that the leaders of the Mother World had finally made a choice. They immediately consumed all the number 7 elements stored in the main ship and opened a temporary wormhole on the battlefield. Almost the next moment, one disk warship after another emerged from the wormhole. In order to ensure victory in this war, the Mother World dispatched 40 of the most advanced warships this time, and brought a cutting-edge weapon. The disk warships that flew out of the wormhole were arranged in a semicircle in the void, with bursts of blue light, and then the space in front of them was constantly shaking like ripples. The sudden support of the opponent directly made the god of space on the field want to retreat. The previous 15 such strange alchemical creations had put them in a hard battle for 100 years, and now there were 40 more. You must know that if they leave the god's domain and the main world, once their godhead is shattered and their god bodies are destroyed, it means that they will fall directly. However, now that they want to retreat, they have obviously forgotten it. The god of space soon discovered in horror that this airspace was blocked from 4 dimensions, and the energy required to distort time and space has increased by more than 1,000 times. This is one of the cutting-edge weapons of the geometric civilization, the dimensional trap. This powerful dimensional weapon can tear apart space and trigger a large-scale quantum tide. Under the scouring of this terrifying cosmic disaster, almost no aggregate of matter or energy can be safe and sound. At least before this war, the Archon firmly believed so, but at this moment this common sense was broken. The dimensional trap they made with all their strength did trap these powerful four-dimensional biological war weapons. The god of space and the god of order, who possessed powerful divine power, had their solid bodies directly submerged under the scouring of the quantum tide, leaving only the godhead struggling to support it. However, Heri, the god of thunder and war, was reluctant to withstand this terrible cosmic disaster, which shows how powerful the great gods are. And with the successive deaths of the three gods of fire, disaster, and sky, the space-time rift connecting the main world and the universe has expanded dozens of times, and a giant hand as big as an asteroid has extended from the rift. This is the main god taking action himself. Chapter 606. The Lord of Crossing the Border and the Ultimate Weapon of Geometry Civilization. It's the Lord God who made the move. At the moment when the giant hand extended from the crack of time and space, all the wizards present were so nervous, especially even others who had experienced the great retreat in the foreign land. They knew very well how terrible the opponent was. Just one blow almost crushed the entire foreign land. Its power could not be described in words. Even Lin En's expression became solemn, and some memories extracted from the residual consciousness of the moon god soon emerged in his mind. Compared with the gods with definite priesthoods such as lies, dead spirits, and life, the Lord God is the real controller of the main world. It is rumored that there are three of them, but even the moon god Diana has never seen them in full force. The only thing that can be confirmed is that the giant hand that extended from the void this time is larger than the one that grabbed the foreign land last time. It is roughly estimated that its size is not much smaller than the eternal star, and it is extremely solid, and even the lines on the skin are clearly visible. Lin En's heart suddenly felt a chill, and then he realized that this is not as simple as a power projection. It is very likely a real hand, a part of the Lord God's body. Obviously, with the fall of the three gods, the time and space gate connecting the two worlds can accommodate more powerful beings. The Lord God is about to step into this world in person. As the giant hand stretched out from the time and space crack, the situation in the light screen suddenly reversed 180 degrees. The cutting-edge weapons of the geometric civilization and the terrifying dimensional trap can even trap gods with great divine power like Heri, and severely injure the other two gods with powerful divine power. But the impact on this giant hand is very limited, only slightly reducing its forward speed. What should we do now? Aurora saw at a glance that this weapon that can affect time and space should be the most powerful force that this alien civilization can use, but it is obviously not enough to deal with enemies at the level of the main god. Lin En pondered for a while, and then spoke. I deliberately left a part of my power in the cabin of the spacecraft in case of emergency. Maybe I can find a way to close the time and space gate, but there is only one chance. In fact, the appearance of the main god was not unexpected to him. After all, the opponent had taken action during the battle in the foreign land. This time, they decided to invade on a large scale, so they must be prepared. Now it depends on whether the extraterrestrial civilization is capable of dealing with this great enemy. In the cosmic void full of debris and electromagnetic rays, the giant palm that covered the sky had already surpassed 45 disk warships and grabbed them. The speed was extremely fast, even under the influence of the dimensional trap. It reached the level of sublight speed. It only takes about 4 seconds to cross the distance of 1 million kilometers. There is no escape. The Archon knew very well that once the other party broke through the dimensional trap, relying on the control of higher dimensional space, the speed could easily exceed the speed of light, and it would be impossible to evacuate. The previous jump may have also exposed the coordinates of the mother world. However, before that, 45 Star Destroyer cannons had roared out together. This kind of terrifying weapon that can disintegrate a planet with one strike is naturally powerful. It quickly blasted open the protective magic covering the surface of the giant palm, and exploded the flesh and bones inside. But this giant palm is really too big. and this degree of injury is not important at all. If you compare it to an analogy, it is like poking dozens of blood holes in the palm with a toothpick. A large amount of blood gushed out from the wound of the giant palm. In fact, there is no concept of direction in the vacuum of the universe. Normally, even if there is a wound, the blood will only adhere to the surface of the palm, or fly around, but at this moment, a large amount of blood is all strangely rushing towards the direction of the battleship. Zoom in a little more. Aurora was quick to notice something was wrong and spoke out quickly. Lin En nodded, and on the light screen, the perspective that originally had a panoramic view of the whole situation immediately shrunk to the falling blood and flesh residue. After seeing the scene inside clearly, everyone present felt a chill in their hearts, because this was not flesh and blood that had been peeled off at all, but a bunch of strange eyes, densely packed and overlapping, which made people feel creepy when they looked at them. Then, red rays shot out from the inside of these eyes. Millions of beams of light bombarded down like a spectacular meteor shower. Even though the energy shield of the disk warship was the top-level protection and the energy reserve was very sufficient, it could not withstand such a large number of attacks. In just one encounter, more than 20 disk warships were destroyed. Looking at the almost crushing battle on the light screen, the congressman present couldn't help but take a breath of cold air. The gap was really too big. Lin En and his companions were not the only ones watching this scene. In the home world of the Geometry Star people, at the disk conference, electromagnetic waves from the corals kept circulating between each other, and colorful lights kept flashing in the conference room. Most of the Archons who participated in the meeting believed that they should immediately cease fire, because the high-dimensional war weapon that emerged from the cracks in time and space was so terrifying that even the most advanced weapon dimension traps in the home world could not play any role. 45 rounds of Star Destroyer cannons only caused some harmless flesh wounds. If they continued to fight, not only would they cause greater casualties, but they would also have to pay a heavy price after surrendering. This was simply a war that could not be won. However, there were also many Geometry Star people who disagreed. If this war ended with their complete defeat, they would inevitably fall into a more dangerous situation. You have to know that they had made a long-distance wormhole jump this time, and most likely they had leaked the coordinates of the home world. And surrender also had levels. If they could show the power of civilization and let the other party know that a rash attack would require heavy casualties, then it would be possible to achieve temporary peace at a certain price. Even dimensional traps can't defeat these high-dimensional weapons. What else can we use to resist the opponent's offensive? Several senior Archons clearly communicated. Although the warships they deployed this time only added up to 55, they were all a batch of ships with relatively advanced technology in the active service of the geometric civilization. There were no old warships that were about to be eliminated, and judging from the situation, even if the Mother World invested several times more power, it would not be able to turn the tide of the war. Why not use the ultimate weapon directly? An oval leader suddenly spoke. The moment the message was received, the conference room immediately fell into a deathly silence. The so-called ultimate weapon is a super weapon developed by the Mother World based on the curvature engine and microscopic particle technology in the past 100 years. However, just 30 years ago, when the weapon development reached the most critical moment, a major accident occurred, which directly led to the complete wiping out of a very important scientific research planet, and a large number of cutting-edge scientific researchers inside also died. In the end, this cutting-edge technology that is beyond the control of the Mother World's current technology was temporarily shelved, and it would not be too late to continue the experiment until there are new breakthroughs in microscopic particles and dimensional technology. But then someone spoke up to express doubts. Is it too late to prepare the final weapon? Now, it's in time, the elliptical leader said with certainty, because the star system he led had been secretly continuing its research and was preparing to conduct the first weapon experiment in a while. The other disk leaders also thought of this. But now is obviously not the time to pursue responsibility. This war is related to the survival of the entire Mother World, so they can only give it a try. After making the decision, the order was transmitted to the target star system through quantum entanglement, and the warships on the battlefield also received the message. Mr. Archon, hurry up, start the dimension jump. the farthest distance. After receiving the word, "Final weapon," the observer on the main ship shuddered and completed the communication at almost the fastest speed. The latter did not hesitate at all and directly used all the remaining energy to make the farthest dimension jump. It was used with caution before because it was very energy-consuming. Only the main ships were qualified to be equipped with it. Moreover, the jump distance was not long, at most about 500,000 kilometers. It could reach the destination in less than 2 seconds at sublight speed. The only advantage was that it was fast, and it only took 0.4 seconds to reach the destination. And now was the time when it was urgently needed. The other main ships also disappeared in situ, but the remaining disk warships were not so lucky. Since they did not carry dimension jumps, they could only flee the area frantically at sublight speed. But destruction came first. A 50-kilometer diameter, ordinary sphere was thrown over by the temporary wormhole. Its appearance was incredibly smooth. Since the moment it appeared, its body had been constantly collapsing inwards. In just 1 second, it was compressed to the size of a crystal ball, just like a huge vortex. The surrounding space, light, debris, all matter and energy were torn into it. This was the ultimate weapon of geometric civilization, an artificial black hole. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelist. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 607, Artificial Black Hole, Dorn God. What is a black hole? It is one of the most terrifying wonders naturally generated in the universe. It is known as a gravitational monster and a star eater. It is usually formed by the collapse of a supermassive star. This artificial black hole is the final creation of the geometric civilization's research on dimensions and microscopic particles. The interior is a core composed of a large number of high-density neutrons, while the exterior is wrapped in a huge mass of special metals, and the middle is separated by element 9. Once the time is ripe, the internal neutron group will be further compressed from a high-dimensional level, thereby crossing the neutron degeneracy force, making the inward collapse of gravity greater than the repulsive force between microscopic particles, thus forming a small black hole. In order to create this ultra-dense star with a diameter of 50 kilometers, the resources of an entire galaxy were almost exhausted, and it took a full 30 years to create such a super weapon. But its power is also terrible. The extremely high density brings extremely terrifying gravity, which can even prevent light from escaping. In 0.01 seconds, a huge gravitational vortex was formed in an instant. The god of thunder and war, who were in the middle, had just escaped from the influence of the quantum tide and felt a strong threat of death. In the high-dimensional vision, the thread representing space was like a stream of water caught in a whirlpool, constantly falling towards the singularity in the center. The first thing to be sucked in was the flesh and blood tissue that looked like eyes, followed by the debris and energy residues scattered in the void, and then the three gods in it. The weaker god of order had already been destroyed under the impact of the quantum tide, and was dragged into the rapidly expanding black hole with almost no resistance. The slightly stronger god of space, Nessus, tried hard to resist this terrifying tearing force, but it was in vain. He had consumed too much divine power in the previous war and had no way to resist the power of this cosmic miracle. He only lasted 0.5 seconds before following the footsteps of the god of order. The bodies of the gods of thunder and war had been completely dismembered, and even those interstellar warships could not escape the gravity of the black hole and were all torn into it, because the escape velocity of this small black hole was 1.5 times the speed of light. It was not that the leaders of the mother world did not take the lives of these geometric stars seriously, but that the giant hand covering the sky came too fast. Even if it was a second at night, these warships would be crushed into pieces. Sacrificing as bait would be more valuable. And the huge hand that extended from the crack of time and space, like a planet, was bent, and it was going to crush the black hole alive. Two powerful forces intertwined on the battlefield. The newly born black hole absorbed limited matter, and it was difficult to shake the giant hand for a while, But as the three powerful gods were sucked into the singularity, the matter and energy inside increased again, and this balance of power was soon broken. A large amount of blood and flesh gushed out from the blood hole blown up by the Star Destroyer, presenting one terrifying blood column after another in the void. The scope of the black hole is also rapidly expanding. For this kind of disaster that can be called a cosmic wonder, the more matter and energy it absorbs, the stronger the distortion of space will be, and its intensity is almost unlimited. What kind of weapon is this? Vittorio and others who watched this scene were horrified. The moment before, they were still worried about the lack of resistance of the geometric civilization in front of the Lord God. The next moment, they stood up one by one and looked at the terrifying space-time vortex in fear. The whole palm extending from the time rift was rolled into the black hole by the strong gravity. First, the flesh was torn off, followed by several knuckles, and then the tearing force became stronger and stronger, directly swallowing several fingers. Lin En was also extremely surprised that the other party actually mastered the method of creating a black hole. His judgment of the technological level of this alien civilization was once again raised. However, judging from the interstellar battleships that were also swallowed by the black hole, it seems that the other party is unlikely to be able to control this super weapon freely. Fortunately, in order to avoid being accidentally injured by the aftermath of the war, the place he chose to watch the movie was very far away, outside the range of the black hole's event horizon. But even so, with the sharp increase in the mass of the black hole, it won't be long before the influence will spread here. It seems that this war is about to end. Seeing the huge palm like a star being torn apart and turned into nutrients for the black hole, Lin En quickly made a judgment. It's time to clean up the mess. At the same time, in the void of the universe 0.1 light-years away, after the terrifying black hole swallowed the giant palm that covered the sky, the range of the event horizon has reached hundreds of thousands of kilometers. From a distance, it looks like a huge hole appeared in the void of the universe. The main ship that had activated the dimension jump before escaped from the coverage of the black hole in a timely manner, but the successive battles and an ultra-long-distance space teleportation have completely exhausted the energy. It can only rely on the spacecraft to capture cosmic rays and then convert them into electricity to barely maintain the energy to move forward, and the speed has also been reduced to about 1/3 of the speed of light. Their only hope is that the scope of the black hole will not continue to expand, otherwise the spacecraft will be directly sucked into it at its current speed. What a terrible power! The Archon looked at the magnificent cosmic wonder behind him, and thought of the giant palm that covered the sky and the sun. That powerful high-dimensional war weapon could actually compete with a superstar like a black hole. Fortunately, it was swallowed by their ultimate weapon in the end. Has the Mother World issued a new order? The Archon quickly calmed down his fluctuating emotions and glanced at the observer beside him. Not yet. The long observer hesitated for a moment, and then sent a message again. Sir Archon, our communication seems to have been blocked. Perhaps because of the interference of the black hole. The Archon vaguely sensed that something was wrong. The existence of the black hole would indeed interfere with the communication, but they had already left the scope of the event horizon, and the communication would never be completely blocked. Just as he was thinking, a strong alarm suddenly rang inside the spacecraft. What happened? The remaining crew members in the spacecraft became nervous in an instant, and colorful communication electromagnetic waves kept flashing in the cockpit. The Archon immediately restarted the ship's optical computer, which had been in standby mode due to power exhaustion, but before that, an extremely unfamiliar electromagnetic signal suddenly and forcibly invaded their communication system and conveyed a message to their brains. Surrender, you have been arrested. Chapter 608. We want to become the most boastful civilization in the universe. At the moment when the electromagnetic signal was sent, a figure of a bright color appeared on the spaceship, holding a long geometric star in his hand. This was undoubtedly the power projection that Lin En had left here on purpose. When he saw that the spaceship could not even support the energy shield, he rushed in directly. The sudden message made the geometric star on the spaceship look extremely tense, and they all took out their weapons from their bodies, anti-electron launchers. But just before they took action, All the time, space and matter around them seemed to be frozen in place, and then hundreds of weapons were suspended together and floated to the back. Lin En stretched out his hand and snapped his fingers, and hundreds of anti-electron launchers were instantly broken up and restored to the most basic particles under the Great Disintegration Technique. What kind of technology is this? The Archon was stunned. Although it was nothing to decompose matter directly into basic particles, the material decomposition device on the spaceship could also do it, but the other party obviously did not carry any technological instruments beyond his understanding, and the other party also cracked their communication signals and language systems. Lin En was able to learn the language of the Geometry Star people so easily, naturally thanks to the power of psychic magic. In fact, the brains and consciousness of these strange-looking aliens are also protected. It is something similar to coding, but unfortunately it is not the same as magic at all, so there are naturally loopholes. So after dealing with the guards on the outside of the spacecraft, Lin En successfully obtained some basic information about the geometry civilization from the brains of these aliens. Now he threw it out to increase his mystery in the eyes of the other party and shape the power of a high-level civilization. After all, the unknown is the most terrifying. With the previous interstellar war as a paving stone, coupled with this deliberately mysterious way of appearance, it is obviously very effective, and instantly stunned these aliens who have never seen magic. We request to become prisoners in accordance with the regulations of the Galaxy Convention. When all the weapons were disarmed and the energy of the spacecraft was exhausted, the Archon did not make any unnecessary resistance. The enemy in front of him was obviously a high-dimensional life form, and they had no chance of winning at all. The so-called Galaxy Convention. Lin En had also received relevant information from the guards, but he was not prepared to pay attention to them at all. It was just a rule agreed upon by more than a dozen larger civilizations in the galaxy in previous wars, and it would be useless outside this galaxy. Similarly, Lin En did not intend to kill all these people, but let the battleship continue to sail to the Eternal Star. Although part of the body of the Lord God and the subsequent tearing force of the black hole wiped out most of the disk battleships, there were still several main battleships with sufficient energy that escaped. Each main battleship should have coordinates, which means that if necessary, the fleet of the Geometry Civilization can appear near this star field at any time, only about 0.1 light-years away from the Eternal Star. Therefore, it is extremely important to intercept a spaceship and negotiate directly to ensure that they are in an advantageous position. Seeing that Lin En did not pay attention to the so-called Galaxy Convention at all, the Archon's heart sank to the bottom of the valley, but there was nothing he could do. He could only bite the bullet and say that the spaceship had no energy and could not sail long distances. The energy you use should be antimatter, right? That's easy to handle. Lin En stretched out his hand, and a large amount of antihydrogen elements continued to gather in his palm, and finally condensed into a fist-sized liquid sphere, floating in the air. Pinching antimatter with bare hands, Lin En showed his hand again, making the Geometry Star people present widen their eyes. This was completely beyond their understanding. A burst of colorful light also jumped on the Archon's body. Fortunately, he managed to remain calm and asked people to take back the equipment for collecting antimatter and prepare to restart the positive and negative power furnace. After Lin En left marks on these Geometry Star people, he let them go to the Eternal Star on their own, and then he arrived at the outer star field alone. The battlefield of this galaxy war is now completely covered by the black hole's event horizon. From a distance, it looks like a dark abyss, and the outside is covered by a circle of extremely bright rings. This is the residual energy that permeates the battlefield, which is spiraling and being sucked into the bottomless darkness. It was also the first time that Lin En appreciated the spectacular cosmic miracle so closely. No, it should be called a miracle created by aliens. Fortunately, the gravitational capture range of the black hole is just at the edge of the opened space-time rift, blocking the channel for the invasion of the main world. It seems that there is no need to worry about the threat from the opposite side in the short term. Of course, This is not 100% insurance. The part of the main god's body that appeared from the space-time rift before showed the ability to compete with the nascent black hole. Lin En could not guarantee whether the other party had the ability to crack the black hole. However, there was also a lot of bad news. That is, while the black hole provided them with protection, it also cleared the entire battlefield. After the gods of the main world fell, whether it was the priesthood, divine power or divine nature, they were all sucked into the singularity at the center of the black hole. It was almost impossible to get these spoils. Forget about the rest. The Thunder Priesthood made Lin En very envious. After all, it was related to the most fundamental power of the universe, electromagnetic force. Once it could be fully mastered, his power would definitely be able to increase to an incredible level. Lin En circled the black hole's event horizon several times, trying to find some missed spoils, but it was futile in the end. He had to settle for the next best thing. Since he could condense the archaic god heading this universe, could he also remanifest the rest of the priesthood? On the other side, in the war conference room of the Eternal Star, Vittorio and others breathed a sigh of relief when they saw that this horrific interstellar war had finally ended, and that both sides were almost hurt. But it was obviously not the time to celebrate, because there was another very urgent problem to be solved, that is, how to conduct subsequent negotiations and strive for as much benefit as possible. You have to know that their current deterrence is completely dependent on the substitutes of the gods in the main world. Once the other party finds out that they have been fooled, the good situation they have painstakingly created before will be ruined. In anger, the Geometry civilization said that it would send more fleets to invade, and they could not resist it with their own strength. Chapter 609, Showing Weakness to the Enemy and Thinking Carefully. How to disguise a high-level civilization is a question worth pondering. The members of the combat conference room all made suggestions with their brains out. Some people thought that the parliament should build a huge tower in the place where the geometric civilization was received. It should be as high as possible, as spacious as possible, and as imposing as possible. Some people also thought that they should show all the most advanced technologies of the parliament, and then tell the other party that this is their weakest and most insignificant technology, so as to achieve the effect of intimidation. Noisy discussions echoed in the conference room. Various outrageous or feasible suggestions were put forward. The most exaggerated one was Raphael's plan. He proposed to create an area built entirely of antimatter as the place for negotiations. This consumes too much energy and is too deliberate. Vittorio shook his head. The other party also mastered the antimatter technology, and it is even possible that the level is higher than theirs. This may not be able to scare them, but it is easy to find flaws. Riv also nodded. Our advantage lies in magic, so we still have to work hard in this area. According to the information they learned, the Eternal Star should be the junction of two different universes. Magic should not exist in other star fields. Using something that is completely beyond the other party's understanding as the core of showing power should have a good effect. Aurora, Anthony and others also agreed with this view, but how to create an oppressive negotiation venue made them rack their brains. While everyone was discussing, Lin En, who had been focusing on his avatar, suddenly opened his eyes and interrupted everyone's discussion. I just received some not-so-good news. The noisy conference room immediately quieted down, and Herv asked with a serious face, could it be that the alien civilization is still unwilling to give up and plans to continue to attack us? No, it's not that bad. Lin En shook his head, and then told the information that his avatar had collected from the minds of those geometric stars. Although this fleet is several light years away, it is not completely unfamiliar with this star field. They can capture the light reflected from the sun through a special instrument and decipher the information carried in it. And as the distance gets closer, the information obtained becomes more comprehensive. Now the Geometry civilization has learned that they have not completed the colonization of the remaining planets in this galaxy, and even regarded them as a planetary civilization that is not yet able to leave the mother star. Of course, this is not wrong. A few years ago, during the reign of the Empire and the Church, without considering the high-end combat power, the level of the entire civilization was not even enough for the second-level civilization in the other party's evaluation system. Fortunately, This war should have a certain impact on the judgment of these aliens. At least from the memory he obtained, some geometry people have begun to doubt whether the coordinates they received from the eternal star were a trap. After pondering for a long time, Vittorio put forward a new point of view. Since it is difficult for us to imagine the posture of a high-dimensional civilization, it is not easy to be watertight, so it is better to do the opposite. Do you mean to actively show weakness to the enemy? Anthony instantly understood what Vittorio meant, and the latter nodded. Since the other party thought that they were a civilization that liked to disguise, it would be better to continue to solidify this cognition. Lin En also thought that this idea was good, but it needed to be added with something else. It is best to show weakness to the enemy, and make people think about it in detail. The battleship will be able to reach this galaxy in about a month. We don't have much time left. A month passed in a flash, just as the Parliament was actively preparing. In the star field of the second spiral arm of the unknown galaxy in the universe, a disk battleship with a diameter of more than 5 kilometers was moving rapidly towards the target galaxy. The distance between the two sides is less than 1 billion kilometers, and the information obtained by capturing reflected light is becoming more and more. But no matter how you look at it, this does not look like a galaxy under the control of a high-level civilization. They could not see the light energy conversion equipment surrounding the entire star, and 4 of the 5 planets were still in the most basic state, and there was no trace of any civilization. Could it be that this was a galaxy that had just been discovered and colonized by the other party? But it was not to the point that there were no basic facilities such as light energy conversion equipment. The Archon was puzzled by this point, but there were more things that made him feel incomprehensible during this period of time. For example, although they were now prisoners, they were not subject to very strict control, and there was no one to watch over them at all, and they were even free to sail. Don't these people worry that they will suddenly turn around and run away? Unless the other party believes that they have no possibility of escape. Out of this fear, the Archon let the spacecraft honestly move forward along the fixed route, but he still made some small moves in private. After the energy system was restored, he secretly communicated with the Mother World and reported their capture. The leaders of the disk did not mean to hold them accountable. They all felt that this was a rare opportunity. They could use this trip to get a close look at the details of the target civilization and then decide on the next move. Due to the fear of being discovered, the secret communication was interrupted after a few atomic minutes. Another important reason was that the target galaxy was already in sight. The shipboard optical computer also sent a prompt soon. 2 spaceships that were no less than the main ship were approaching at a very fast speed, and there were very obvious space-time fluctuations around them. It is indeed the curvature engine. The Archon confirmed this again, and then hurriedly sent a message. Quick, convert the appearance of this spaceship into encrypted information as quickly as possible and send it back to the Mother World. He knew very well that the cutting-edge scientific researchers in the Mother World were also studying the curvature engine technology, and it had reached a critical moment. The ready-made spaceship in front of him could undoubtedly become a good reference. Just like before, the information was sent out without any obstruction. At the disk meeting at this moment, the leaders who received the message immediately summoned a group of top spaceship designers to analyze the technological level of the other civilization from the appearance. If they could find a way to imitate and crack the secret of the curvature engine, it would naturally be great. Chapter 610, Lin En, the Galaxy Governor of the Pan-Magic Empire. Under the powerful analytical ability of the optical brain, the transmitted image information was quickly suspended in the disk conference room in the form of a 3-dimensional projection. Interstellar spacecrafts are always the benchmark for testing the technology of a civilization. From the power system, appearance design, and material application, we can often see the technological background of a civilization. The appearance of the 2 spacecraft sent for contact looks like a huge diamond-shaped fortress. What makes people particularly noticeable is that there are many exquisite patterns engraved on the shell, which seem to be arranged according to a certain rule. Obviously, it is not just as simple as decoration. As for the function, a group of scientific researchers could not figure it out when they discussed a few atoms. Even the material used to make the shell of the spacecraft is completely unknown. Because these two ships were specially modified in the past month to cope with this contact, a special coating with a thickness of 30 centimeters was applied on the shell, which was made of magic gold dug from a foreign land. This special magic material is also very magical. Although the data on hardness, radiation resistance and high pressure resistance are not as good as the original shell metal, it is also hundreds of times harder than ordinary steel. The most important thing is that it has a high magic conductivity. With the magic array developed by Vittorio, it can block the detection of various rays in all directions. The successive setbacks in materials and alchemy made the spacecraft designers of the geometry civilization feel a strong sense of frustration. The only thing they could understand was the exterior design. I guess they probably placed a curvature generator at each end, forming a U-shaped curvature space with tight front and wide back, pushing the spacecraft forward. A designer who looked like a ring quickly guessed the structure of the two spacecraft based on the shape of the spacecraft and the detection data of the space fluctuations sent over. But he was very confused about the structure of the two spacecraft, because according to the analysis of the optical computer, the pointed cone with a small front and a large back is the most energy-saving and reasonable form of the curvature spacecraft, and the new warship they envisioned will also adopt a similar structure. However, a civilization that may come from a higher dimension will obviously not make such a low-end mistake, and the use of a diamond shell must have some deep meaning. In view of the two setbacks in materials and alchemy, no designer dared to say that the other party's spacecraft design had major defects, which would only add to the joke. They couldn't understand. There was only one possibility, that is, there was an extremely obvious technological gap between the two sides. Under the intense discussion of a group of spacecraft designers, colorful spectra flashed in the entire disk conference hall, and various ideas were proposed. For example, one of the designers believed that the other party deliberately adopted a diamond structure, which was likely to be used to carry some special weapons or place long-distance orbital acceleration devices. There were also geometric stars who proposed a new idea. Is it possible that the reason why the other party's curvature spacecraft is a diamond structure is because this advanced civilization simply likes this shape, just like they like circles? Compared with the designers who were racking their brains to think about the structure of the spacecraft, the geometric stars who had become captives at the other end of the galaxy were under greater pressure. Under the escort of the two curvature spacecrafts, they went to their destination this time, the Moon. This is a very desolate satellite. There is no huge urban agglomeration or any protective measures. All you can see is a piece of wasteland. Is this the satellite prison you built? A white light shone from the Archon's body, and he couldn't help but speak out. Many civilizations in the universe like to build prisons at the center of the satellite, using its huge shell as a natural protective layer, usually used to detain some dangerous galaxy-level felons. But looking at the barren surface, the Archon felt that it was really unlike, because all the satellite prisons he had seen were without exception set up with heavy protection to prevent rescue or escape. At least there must be space-based weapons and planetary energy protection devices around the satellite, right? Otherwise, once attacked by the enemy fleet, wouldn't it be impossible to even fight back? Facing the Archon's inquiry, Raphael had no intention of replying, but just showed an intriguing smile at the right time. The hundreds of captured geometry stars were confused, constantly analyzing the meaning of each other's expressions, completely unaware that Raphael simply didn't know how to answer. According to the strategy discussed by the Parliament before, if you don't know how to answer, just smile. This is undoubtedly a very simple and effective method. Although it can't solve the problem, it is enough to make people fall into doubt and confusion, which is exactly the effect they need to achieve. Okay, we're here. This is it. Raphael led the geometry star people to a flat open space, then clapped his hands in their confused eyes, and the whole earth shook. Under the gaze of hundreds of eyes, a magnificent building that mixed magic alchemy and federal design style rose from the ground. Hundreds of pillars engraved with runes included everyone, and the surface of the desert under their feet quickly became hard, showing a smooth and hard like gold. In just a dozen seconds, a gorgeous conference hall was formed, and then thousands of bright-colored figures appeared on both sides of the hall. These are all some unknown energy life forms. The Archon quickly confirmed this through electromagnetic waves. The geometry star people were also terrified. It was not until then that they realized that this planet was not as empty and lacking protection as they expected, but they just didn't see it. The energy creatures that appeared in the conference room were a group of gods with pseudo-legendary powers that Lin En created with divine power and imitation of the style of the gods in the main world. As for this conference hall that suddenly appeared, now the entire moon is within the coverage of the divine domain. Not to mention making a building, even creating a city out of thin air is easy. Lin En, who led all affairs in the dark, did not let these alien organisms think too much. He appeared in the main seat of the conference hall through a close-range wormhole and spoke directly. Everyone who has come from afar, I am the Galaxy Governor of the Pan-Magic Empire. You can call me Lin En. Pan-Magic Empire, Galaxy Governor. The Archon remembered these two terms firmly in his mind. Seeing that the other party did not put him directly in prison, he immediately guessed that this should be a process similar to the trial of crimes. Chapter 611, War Trial and Sky High Compensation. Respected Governor, I am the Captain and Chief Archon of the 37th column of the Geometry Civilization. Please forgive us for our previous offense. In fact, this conflict is just a misunderstanding. We went to this galaxy not with malice, but with goodwill and friendship. The Archon's body was faintly glowing with white light. While transmitting the message, the spire-like body also split apart, forming a 90-degree bend from top to bottom. This is usually the etiquette for the lower to meet the higher. After an interstellar war and several attacks, the Archon was 90% sure that the other party was a super civilization with a technological level beyond the mother world, so his attitude was naturally lowered to the extreme. After all, this conversation was too important and directly related to the survival of the mother world. Goodwill and friendship? Before Lin En could answer, Arid, who was mixed in the Divine Servant team, stood up and transmitted in an extremely sharp voice. Do you mean the sudden and unreasonable attack on the probe we sent? Not without reason, Governor. The Archon hurriedly explained. We detected that the probe was still accelerating even at a very close distance. It may have great malice, so we made a tentative, faint attack. The Archon thought for a long time before he uttered this word. This is completely your one-sided statement. We have accurately calculated the orbital path of the attack. If we don't evade it in advance, these 15 energy cannons will hit the probe from different directions, Arid said with a sneer, and Raphael on the side also added. In addition, this probe was just patrolling the border of the galaxy as usual. After discovering your movements, it accelerated to confirm the situation, but it didn't expect to be attacked the most fiercely. The words of the two people made the Archon choke directly. It was indeed their fault to take action first, but if the other party hadn't made such a misleading move, he would have been more cautious. But the next moment, the Archon realized that he had made a very big misjudgment before. That is, he regarded the acceleration of the probe as a sign of attack. This may be true for traditional propulsion systems. After all, deceleration requires a cycle. It usually takes about 20 atomic seconds for the most advanced warships of the geometry civilization to go from sublight speed to full hovering. But the curvature engine is different. It is likely that it will take less than 1,000 atomic seconds to reduce from the highest speed to the static level. After understanding this, the Archon felt a tremor in his body, as if he was on the verge of disintegration. In other words, it was because of his misjudgment that this interstellar war that should not have happened was finally caused. Now, even if he returns to his home world, he will probably be imprisoned or even executed for the crime of provoking war. But now is obviously not the time to consider personal honor and disgrace, and the Archon hurriedly explained. I think this is a not-so-nice misunderstanding, Governor. Our ships use antimatter sources to drive propulsion devices. It is relatively difficult to change direction and slow down at ultra-high speeds, so speeding up within 1 million kilometers is usually considered a prelude to an attack. The Archon sincerely repeated the process of his misjudgment of the situation in launching the attack, and said that as the culprit of the war between the two civilizations, he could self-destruct to apologize. This certainly cannot completely make up for the losses of the war, but the geometry civilization can also provide corresponding compensation. Compensation. How do you want to compensate? Is it a galaxy, or 100 Galaxy-class battleships? Raphael's face showed a bit of disdain, but he was suppressing his excitement and joy in his heart. They have seen the power of the geometry civilization. The Star Destroyer alone made Raphael envious. This is a powerful weapon that can kill the true god and destroy a world with one blow. The super weapon named Black Hole by Lin En is even more terrifying, and can even repel the main god. The Archon naturally did not know Raphael's little thoughts. In his opinion, this is an obvious mockery, but it is normal to think about it. Facing a civilization with a higher level of technology, it is not an easy thing to come up with compensation that satisfies the other party. At least it is not something that he can decide. Dear Governor, I cannot give you a direct promise on the issue of compensation. I need to ask the leaders before making a decision. The Archon lowered his attitude again. I've given you a whole month, and you still haven't come up with a charter? Lin En suddenly said. These words made the Archon feel cold in his heart, and he realized that he was able to contact the mother world before because the other party deliberately let him go. It is even possible that the entire communication process was under the surveillance of the other party, and they didn't notice it at all. In this case, I'll give you a few more days to think about it carefully. Lin En waved his hand, and a dozen divine servants took the strange-looking geometry star people away. Under the strict supervision of several divine servants, the Archon returned to the spaceship alone, and used the shipborne optical computer to meet with the waiting disk leaders, reporting the latest news and his own guesses. However, such a big thing obviously cannot be discussed in a short time, and there are many voices of agreement and opposition. Fortunately, Lin En did not ask them to give an immediate answer, but during these few days, the geometry star people as captives did not receive any preferential treatment, but were imprisoned. This prison was built in the center of the moon. After hearing about the satellite prison from the Archon, Lin En temporarily manipulated the divine domain to mold it. The scope is very large, but it looks a bit crude. Hundreds of geometric stars were imprisoned separately. In addition, Lin En deliberately used the intelligent creatures such as the Moko people and the right people in the main world as a blueprint, and used divine power to mold some prisoners into it as their roommates to facilitate the next step of the plan. The technological level of this alien civilization is very high. A little bit of leakage can benefit them a lot, but since they are now pretending to be a civilization from a higher dimension, directly asking for some low-end technology will most likely arouse suspicion. In addition, the desolation of this galaxy is seriously inconsistent with their self-proclaimed settings. It may be able to confuse the other party for a while, but it may not be possible after some time, so there must be a more reasonable explanation. Chapter 612. You call this high moral civilization? This is where you will stay next. Raphael imprisoned the Archon of Geometry and 2 lieutenants in the depths of the satellite prison, and then took out the uranium ore, a ball of lunar soil and a bottle of nutrient solution and asked, "Do you need food, uranium, energy blocks or nutrients for carbon-based life forms?" The Archon glanced at the food in Raphael's hand. He didn't dare to take the only decent nutrient solution casually, so he shook his head and said that they usually use hibernation to solve the problem of energy consumption, and can last up to 1,000 atoms without any nutrition. Raphael didn't care, left a few people, and left with the gods. After these energy life forms left, the Archon began to observe this satellite prison. It must be said that the overall description can only be used as a simple one. In addition to the cage built with unknown metals, no existing technological creations can be seen. The only advantage is that the space is very large. This prison is a little too careless in defense. An adjutant could not help but send a message. If they had left the uranium element just now, they could have made a micro-decay bomb by hand and blown up the cage directly. The Archon was also very puzzled. From the recent contact, the performance of this civilization was really strange. It was very backward in some aspects, but it was so strong that people could not see the limit. Some civilizations with crooked technology trees do have some aspects that are extremely strong and others that are slightly weak, but the gap is not so exaggerated. Moreover, No matter how many aspects are involved in the manufacture of interstellar spacecraft, it is impossible to mass-produce long-distance spacecraft without extremely strong industrial power and technological reserves. Another group of idiots. Just as the Archon was about to reorganize his thoughts, a voice suddenly sounded in their brains. This voice was very strange. It was not an electromagnetic wave, but it could pass through the mental protection and be accurately received by them. This was a bizarre scene, causing a glimmer of fear on the bodies of several geometry stars. They turned around and found that there were not only them in the cage, but also two prisoners who were imprisoned together, but they had not been detected by their electromagnetic wave detection before. The one who spoke was a right man, whose body could almost blend into the surrounding environment when it was completely still, and could even shield the prying of electromagnetic waves, while the other prisoner was curled up in the corner and snoring. Before the other party could react, the right man continued to speak mockingly. Just 3 days ago, there was a fool who was imprisoned with the same idea as you, and the result was ... tsk. The right man did not continue to speak, but from the tone of his voice, the other party's end must have been very tragic. The Archon was very interested in this prisoner who was also imprisoned in the depths of the prison, but it was embarrassing that they did not carry a language translation device and could not decipher the language to communicate. After thinking for a while, the spire-shaped top of the head opened, and a projected image floated in the void. This is the relatively ancient and most useful three-dimensional image communication method. However, this low-end communication method made the light people very disgusted. Which civilization are you from? You can't even communicate with your mind, so how come you are imprisoned here? Let me build a channel for mind communication, and you don't have to waste your efforts anymore. The light people said, and then used the magic net to invade their consciousness. Being despised for no reason made the three geometry stars very embarrassed, but they couldn't find a reason to refute, and they couldn't refuse with their faces, so they had to accept this special communication method. After solving the language problem, the communication between the two sides became extremely smooth. When they learned that the other party was captured and imprisoned here because he led the fleet in the war with the Magic Empire, their attitude softened a bit, and they were quite sympathetic and reminded him, "Don't look at this prison. It's very simple on the surface. There is no protection. In fact, there is no possibility of escape." "Why do you say that?" an adjutant asked unexpectedly. "As far as I know, the Magic Empire has mastered a very powerful technology that can inject a special energy into microscopic elements, thereby achieving absolute control over everything. In other words, the entire satellite is under the control of the other party. The reason why there is no protection is that there is no need for it," the lightman explained half-truthfully. As he spoke, the ground began to shake violently, or rather, the entire planet was shaking. The lightman calmly told the group of geometry stars not to panic. This was just a routine. Every 3 hours, the positions of all the prisons would change randomly, which meant that no one could really determine where they were on the moon. After this position change was over, the lightman spoke again. "If it's not unexpected, you should have received the news that this star field has special energy and came here specially, right?" Also, the Archon keenly caught this word and hurriedly asked the other party if he had the same experience. The lightman nodded, and then shook his head helplessly. "Similar news has actually spread in other galaxies in this universe. I suspect this is a trap, or that news is a deliberate bait." "Bait?" "Yes, just like fishing. Star systems like this that are unguarded and have special energy are like bait hanging on the end of a hook, spread all over the corners of each galaxy, quietly waiting for the big fish to take the bait." At this point, the lightman couldn't help but sigh. "I call it the fisherman's civilization." The concept of fishing was somewhat unfamiliar to the group of geometry stars, but after the lightman's explanation, they quickly understood the meaning. "But why is it so troublesome?" the Archon asked in confusion. "With the technological level displayed by the Magic Empire, it should be a very simple thing to launch an invasion and occupy the entire galaxy. No one knows this. Perhaps it is because of the extremely high moral standards that they don't like to take the initiative to launch an invasion." The lightman shrugged and guessed. The bodies of the geometric stars suddenly appeared with colorful glimmers. They actively spread rumors, set traps, attracted the greedy to invade, and then encircled, invaded, and extorted them. Can this be called a high moral civilization? After the reminder of the light people, the Archon finally realized that something was wrong. Although he commanded the fleet to launch the attack first, the opponent had opened the space-time wormhole before the attack reached the opponent, and sent out powerful four-dimensional biological weapons to fight. It didn't look like they were here for a cruise. Now it seems that the opponent is clearly inducing them to take the initiative to launch an attack so that they can be on a moral high ground. Insidious. It's really too insidious. Chapter 613. If it weren't for you, we would have almost been cheated. From the inexplicable message they received from the exploration fleet thousands of years ago, to the defeat and capture in the interstellar war, to entering this satellite prison, all the strange things that made them feel strange were explained at this moment. There are many civilizations in the universe. Due to the different environments of survival and evolution, all kinds of strange things may appear, and high moral civilizations are naturally not rare. Some powerful civilizations have very high-end technology and will not worry about precious energy issues at all. They do not need to rely on external expansion to obtain rare elements. They are more inclined to dominate the order of a region, rather than relying on the absolute advantage in technology to invade and massacre. The civilization they are facing this time may be up to standard in technology, but it is obviously another strange thing in morality. The Archon suspected that the main intelligent race of the Magic Empire preferred peace rather than war and the extremely abundant materials and long-term stability, but the upper class obviously did not think so. Such a conflict led to such a unique defensive counterattack strategy. If the enemy launches the attack first, then the war and trial against the evil invaders will become justified. This is the meaning of the existence of bait. The more the Archon thought about it, the colder he felt in his heart. Fortunately, it was not all bad news, at least, without a sufficient reason. The other party should not launch a large-scale invasion of the geometry civilization. So you were also lured here by this bait? The Archon looked at the Lightman, who was also a prisoner, and felt a sense of sympathy. No. In fact, I am the leader of an interstellar mercenary. I was ordered to rescue several serious criminals imprisoned in this satellite prison. Due to the previous agreement, it is not convenient to disclose it. As for the result, alas, you have seen it now. The Lightman sighed. Although he did not explain the details, everything was self-evident. The geometry people were full of sympathy. No wonder the other party reminded them that this prison looked simple, but it was actually very terrifying. It turned out that they had personal experience as evidence. After jointly criticizing the insidious behavior of the Magic Empire, the relationship between the two sides immediately became much closer. However, while being friendly on the surface, both sides also wanted to get more information from each other. Most of what the Lightman talked about were various settings about the Magic Empire, and he only occasionally mentioned his experience as an interstellar mercenary before being arrested, and how famous his name was, but anyone could see that he was bragging. The geometry stars had no intention of hiding some basic information about the current galaxy, or in their opinion, this low-level intelligence was of no value. But this was exactly what the Parliament lacked the most. At the end of the discussion, the Lightman also deliberately reminded the geometry stars that after they lost the war, the other side would probably ask for a lion's mouth, put forward an angry condition, and then deliberately show weakness to make them feel that there was no chance of a fight, and take advantage of the situation to take control of the entire star field. The Archon agreed with him. After knowing the other side's various insidious behaviors, they would naturally not be fooled by those appearances. While the few people were discussing, in the Eternal Star, the capital of the Magic Kingdom, the senior members of the Parliament and the Speaker were observing the situation in the satellite prison through the projection magic. Seeing that the other party had been completely fooled, Aurora said with a smile, "Aren't these alien civilizations too easy to fool? It's just that they don't understand magic." Lin En shook his head. The high-end technology they showed was real, and it was only with the previous war as a prelude that it had such a good effect. This attempt to use prisoners to obtain intelligence was undoubtedly very successful. While explaining the reason for the backwardness of this star system, It was also possible to obtain intelligence to the greatest extent without causing strong vigilance from the other party. According to those geometric stars, there are 15 civilizations in this galaxy that can reach the galaxy level and achieve long-distance voyages. Among them, there are 3 6th-level civilizations with the same strength as them. Since the technological levels between them are not much different, it is generally peaceful. There is no way. A galaxy is too big. The diameter alone reaches hundreds of thousands of light years. That is to say, it takes hundreds of thousands of years to fly from one side to the other at the speed of light. If there is no wormhole technology, perhaps a civilization from the beginning to the end cannot cross the entire galaxy. Then what should we ask for as compensation? Vittorio said in a deep voice. This is undoubtedly a rare opportunity. A galaxy-level civilization has too many technologies that they need, but they certainly cannot ask for these low-end technologies directly. Otherwise it will arouse the other party's suspicion. Maybe we can ask for an entire star system, Prov suggested. As long as there is a physical object, they can use material analysis to decipher and replicate the other party's technology. This is also the advantage of magic. The other speakers are a little worried whether the other party will agree. You know, it is an entire star system. At least it contains a star and several transformed planets. Before this, they never thought that these huge celestial bodies could be used for trading. If it's just a star system, there should be no problem. Lin En said freely. The star system under the control of the geometric civilization is very vast. When sending quantum entanglement communication before, there were hundreds of connected light spots. Lin En even felt that they asked for too little. Since he had already told the other party that he was asking for a lot, he naturally had to ask for more. The broken window effect should be very useful for most intelligent creatures. When searching the memories of those geometry star people, there was something that interested him very much. That is, the so-called element 7. It was this strange element that allowed geometry civilization to achieve a technological leap and become one of the most powerful civilizations in this galaxy. After several hours of discussion, the quota for compensation was officially announced: 5 star systems, 100 active warships and 10,000 tons of element 7. When this news was passed back to the mother world, the leaders of geometry civilization were extremely angry. This condition was humiliating, and element 7 was the foundation of geometry civilization's prosperity and could not be handed over easily. In the eyes of many disk leaders, they were not defeated in the last galaxy war. Although they lost more than 50 of the most advanced galaxy-level warships, they also killed the high-dimensional biological weapons sent by the other side. From the scene, it is not an exaggeration to say that they are evenly matched. If you are listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelist. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We are waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 614. A Sudden Wealth. A magic empire that becomes a galaxy-level civilization. Under Lin En's harsh conditions that could be called robbery, even the disk leaders who were originally inclined to pay compensation for defeat could not accept it. War. Only a war can wash away this shame. A disk leader who advocated war sent a message with the highest frequency of electromagnetic waves. Since the other party had no sincerity in negotiation, then gather more fleets and fight a full-scale war with the other party. Similar remarks soon dominated the entire disk parliament. However, as the true leader of the geometric civilization, the ring-shaped supreme leader was not blinded by anger, but looked at the Archon who had just been released as the middleman of this negotiation through the quantum communication screen. Tova, you have been deep into the world of that civilization. How much do you know about them? Compared with us, how is their technological level? Very powerful, very powerful. The technological level of the other civilization is definitely not something we can compete with. The Archon named Tova said with great confidence. I think we should give up the idea of war, continue negotiations, and reduce the compensation to an acceptable level through consultation. Isn't this a bit exaggerated? A disk leader questioned with dissatisfaction. If the technological level of the two sides is really so different, then they should have no ability to resist in the previous galaxy war. And from the images sent by the warships that arrived at this star system, it doesn't look like a galaxy ruled by a powerful civilization at all, but is full of desolation and backwardness. Seeing that the leaders of the discs were confused by these superficial appearances, Tova hurriedly told them all the information about the magic empire that he had inquired about in the prison. Using a galaxy as bait, releasing news to induce other civilizations to take the initiative to launch an attack, and then using the righteousness of anti-invasion to counter-encircle and suppress these to meet their own moral needs. Such a sinister behavior shocked the leaders of the discs. No wonder they always feel that this civilization looks so divided. But compared to Tova, who has personally experienced it and believes in the words of the light people, some of the leaders of the discs still have deep doubts about this and are unwilling to believe that the gap between the two sides will be so big that they cannot resist. "Are you sure you are not mistaken?" the supreme leader also asked solemnly. "I have personally witnessed the powerful technology of manipulating elementary particles. In just one atomic fraction of time, they built a huge courtroom on the surface of the satellite, and their satellite prison also proves this." Tova spared no effort to exaggerate the power of the magic empire, and even deliberately boasted, just to dispel the war intentions of the disc leaders as much as possible. Under Tova's constant assurance and exaggeration, the disc leaders who were originally excited and wanted to start a war had to calm down again and think about the pros and cons of the war. It is undoubtedly stupid to start a war without any chance of winning, which will only drag the entire civilization into the bottomless abyss. "Perhaps only our ultimate weapon can make the other party feel afraid," Tova said hesitantly. "This is also the only bargaining chip they can take out in the negotiation, because it really repelled the high-dimensional biological weapon sent by the other party to annihilate the fleet. Moreover, judging from the intelligence sent by other fleeing main ships, the black hole still exists in the void and has not been dealt with. It is not known whether it is impossible to do so or the consumption is too great, but in any case, it is enough to serve as a powerful deterrent and bargaining chip." When Tova mentioned the ultimate weapon, the leaders of the discs had different expressions. The artificial black hole is undoubtedly the killer of the geometric civilization, and it is not an exaggeration to say that it is a black technology that transcends the civilization level, because in addition to particle and dimensional technology, it also requires a large amount of element 7 to manufacture it. Before, it was even jokingly called the Eternal 100 Years because of the high difficulty of research and development. Now that it has finally been made, the only stock used for experiments has been used up. If you want to create a second micro-black hole, it will take at least another 10 years. For a galaxy-level civilization, 10 years is not long or short. Sometimes an interstellar voyage takes more than 10 years, but the other party may not be willing to give them another 10 years of preparation time. At 1.5 times the speed of light, it takes 5 years to reach the border of the geometric civilization from the eternal star. This does not include wormhole jumping, a technology that can cross a large distance in a short time. When Tova saw that the leaders of the disc did not answer immediately, he knew that they might not be able to use the ultimate weapon for the second time in a short time. Fortunately, the enemy might not know this, and might use intimidation to increase their deterrence. Tova, who was unsure but shouldering a heavy responsibility, quickly returned to the negotiations with the bottom line of compensation discussed by the leaders of the disc. After more than half a month of bluffing and compromise, this unique negotiation that concerned the survival of two civilizations was finally finalized. The original 5-star systems were reduced to 3, the 100 active warships were reduced to 20, and the Element 7 was reduced from 10,000 tons to 500 tons. Originally, Tova wanted to replace the Element 7 with other rare mineral resources, and even maintain the compensation of 5-star systems on this basis. After all, the Element 7 is so important that it is not an exaggeration to say that it is the foundation of geometric civilization. Raphael, who was in charge of the negotiations, originally wanted to agree, because the compensation given by the other party was actually far higher than their expectations. In the end, it was Lin En who insisted on asking for it, which forced the other party to give in. Given the identities they had established before, They needed to maintain a relatively strong position. The more the other party wanted to give, the more casual they had to act. The less the other party wanted to give, the more they had to insist on asking for it. It was under such conflicts that the worst time was almost on the verge of war. Both Raphael and Tova were scared, but they had to bite the bullet and continue to talk. Although no one wanted the war to really break out, they had to make the other party believe that they were ready for a war at any time. So much so that when Raphael returned from the negotiations, he was a little depressed, but his face was filled with an unbearable smile, because they won this great victory without sacrificing a single soldier. With 3 entire star systems and 20 interstellar battleships capable of long-distance voyages, the Magic Kingdom, it should be said that the Magic Empire is a veritable galaxy-level civilization from today. Chapter 615 Lin En. Don't be surprised by what I'm going to do next. When the returning Raphael made the results of the negotiations public, the entire Wizard Council was immediately filled with great joy. They actually succeeded in robbing a powerful interstellar civilization, and the compensation they received was beyond everyone's imagination. It was like a worker who worked hard to save money suddenly received a huge inheritance. This excitement was simply beyond description. The happiest were undoubtedly the legendary speakers, because in a sense, a planet represented a god. You should know that there are now 15 legendary wizards in the parliament. Although the most powerful Vittorio had just broken through the 9th ring a few years ago, there was still a long way to go before the ascension ceremony was held. But now that materials are extremely abundant, this day will come sooner or later, and the galaxy they are in has only 5 planets, which is obviously not enough to share. Some speakers even worry that Lin En, who ascended to the throne of God first, may be able to monopolize the resources of the entire star system. Now there is no need to worry about the problem. Now they have gained control of 3 star systems with a little trickery. This universe is even more vast, and the resources can be said to be almost unlimited. Just as the speakers were preparing to celebrate, Lin En asked a very important question. When are they going to pay the compensation? That's not stated clearly. Raphael answered hesitantly, and at the same time realized that he might have made a big mistake. That is, the concept of time in the cosmic civilization might be different from theirs. Due to the previous negotiations and the intelligence overheard in the satellite prison, they have figured out the basic time units of the geometric civilization, which are divided into atomic seconds, atomic minutes and atomic hours. As the name suggests, this method of timing is based on the natural vibration frequency of atoms, which is very similar to the atomic clocks they made. The only difference is that the elements used are different. The other party uses hydrogen, which is number 1 on the periodic table and has the smallest mass. In addition, the concept of year is also in the words of the geometric civilization. If the time is converted, a year of the geometric star is about the same as 10 months year, and the unit standard is also based on 1 circle of the mother star around the star. This should also be the easiest and relatively applicable timekeeping method for primary civilizations. After the geometric civilization entered the starry sky, it was still retained, just as Lin En guessed. Although the compensation issue had been finalized, the other party obviously had no intention of paying immediately, but found various reasons to delay. For example, the reserves of element 7 are limited, and the geometry civilization does not have much inventory. The mining and separation of ore takes time, so 500 tons of element 7 will be divided into several batches, and it is expected to be delivered within 10 years. As for the 3 star systems seeded, only a star map was given, marking the location of these star systems, without giving them specific coordinates. 20 star system class battleships were placed in these star systems. Raphael, who was originally high-spirited, was dumbfounded, because from the star map, the location of these star systems was roughly estimated to be more than 70 light-years away from them. Even the original God-powered spacecraft would take a full 50 years to arrive. Are they going to regret it? Aurora looked at the star map sent over and frowned in dissatisfaction. No. This is probably just a test, Lin En said in a deep voice. The influence of the geometry civilization is very wide. The other party did not deliberately choose those star systems that are hundreds or even thousands of light years away from them. which means that they are not deliberately making things difficult, and it is impossible to find any mistakes in this regard. The only problem is that the location coordinates are not directly given. This is a test of whether they have the ability to carry out long-distance delivery to unknown star fields in a short period of time. It seems that their previous deception did not completely convince the other party. Raphael was somewhat annoyed. During the previous negotiations, he was busy discussing the gains and losses, arguing with the other party about the scope of compensation, and trying to increase his own bargaining chips as much as possible. Instead, he ignored the equally important issue of time, giving the other party the possibility to do something. Of course, the main reason is that the pressure of disguise is too great. If he is not careful, he will become the fuse that triggers the war again. He has no intention and is too concerned about these details. It's not your fault, Speaker Raphael. No one would be willing to make the other party bleed heavily after losing a small war. Even if there is no such thing, they will find another reason. Lin En shook his head. It is estimated that there will be no less such small tests in the future. The geometry civilization will most likely continue to observe their subsequent actions. Whether it is accepting these star systems or managing these new territories that have been incorporated into the empire, they will become indicators for the other party to measure their strength. If they find that their style of behavior is different from that of the high-dimensional civilization, or if they fail to show enough deterrence, 8 out of 10 will have to change again. Do we need to ask them to hand over the coordinates? Raphael asked with a frown. This is equivalent to admitting that we cannot carry out long-distance space-time delivery without coordinates. Lin En rejected it. This technology is obviously very important. If they do not have such capabilities, it means that even if they can win in a head-on war, it will take thousands of years to completely eliminate the geometry civilization. After all, the territory of a galaxy-level civilization is too large. Lin En's words made the speakers present frown. If there were no coordinates, they could not really drive the spacecraft for 50 years, right? But fortunately, we have already obtained the coordinates in advance. Lin En's mouth suddenly showed a smile. Vittorio and the others paused, looking at Lin in surprise. Prov seemed to have suddenly thought of something, and his eyes lit up. Could it be that? Yes, Lin nodded. Although the nearest coordinates are 4 light-years away and cannot be reached directly, this may be more beneficial to us. Raphael was confused. When did they get the coordinates of these star systems? Why didn't he know? Raphael was extremely confused, but seeing that the other speakers all looked like they had suddenly realized something, he really couldn't bring himself to ask. Notify those geometry star people immediately. We will send people to receive these 3 star systems in one day. Don't let them be too surprised, Lin said firmly. Chapter 616. We have to act as arrogant as possible. The leaders of the great universe, unknown galaxy, and the second spiral arm gathered in a disk conference room through stereoscopic projection, waiting for the response from the Magic Empire. Although the war compensation had been finalized long ago, the time of delivery was not agreed upon in the contract, which undoubtedly became an opportunity to make some small moves. As the envoy of the negotiation, Toa, who had seen the technological level of the Magic Empire, strongly opposed it, and was extremely worried that such an offensive move would cause retaliation from the other party. Unfortunately, his opinion was obviously not taken seriously, because this compensation is not a small amount even for a galaxy civilization. The 3 star systems are okay, which is only equivalent to a few tenths of the territory. Even if they are seeded, it is not a big deal, but it is not very good in terms of face. However, the other 2 conditions are very annoying. Once the 20 active warships are delivered, it is equivalent to making most of the cutting-edge technology public. Even if the other party may not be interested in these technologies, they can use them to analyze the various data and weaknesses of the warships, so that they will be at a great disadvantage in the next interstellar war. Not to mention the element 7, which was definitely the thing they were most reluctant to give away. So even if the situation was stronger than the people, many of the disk leaders were unwilling to hand over the things just like that, and planned to continue to test the other party's strengths and weaknesses, and delay some time. The final delivery date of element 7 was chosen 10 years later, precisely because it would take 10 years to create a second micro-black hole. Although this test plan was unanimously agreed by the vast majority of the disk leaders and left enough room for reasoning, facing a civilization whose technological level might far exceed theirs, no one could completely put their minds at ease before getting an accurate reply from the other party. About an atomic hour later, Tova finally reconnected to the mother star's communication. "How is it? Did they raise any objections?" A disk leader hurriedly sent a message. "That's not the case." Tova shook his head, and then hesitated and said again, "But they said they will send people to receive these 3-star systems tomorrow, so we shouldn't be too surprised." The disk leaders looked at each other, and these words were obviously beyond their expectations. Could it be that the Magic Empire really has a way to teleport over long distances without coordinates? You know, even if one of the main ships is captured by the enemy, the portable positioning coordinates have been used in the war before, which means that the Magic Empire should not have their accurate positioning now, and it is a distance of 70 light years in one day. They have long understood the so-called day, which is the time for a planet in the galaxy to rotate once, and one cycle is about 20 atomic hours. Achieving ultra-long distance delivery in such a short time is beyond their cognition, and only a technology that is still in the imagination can achieve it. Since the speed of light is the upper limit of three-dimensional space, it is impossible to achieve this in low-dimensional space. The coordinates can only be directly sent from high dimensions by some method. For example, the probability cloud of a free electron covers a wide range of directions and can appear anywhere in an instant. If a civilization can control this probability and establish a high-dimensional model of the entire galaxy, it may be able to send a large number of electrons back to provide enough energy, and then establish a space-time channel through the entanglement reaction between microscopic particles. However, this technology is still in theory, and no researcher dares to guarantee its real existence. Several disk leaders even suspected that the other party was just exaggerating. But normally, no one would tell a lie that would be exposed in a very short time, so they must be very sure. The supreme leader felt a little uneasy. The other party might not just intend to send people to take over the 3-star systems, otherwise there would be no need to remind them not to be too surprised. "How long is it until the day they define?" the supreme leader suddenly asked. "About 7 atomic hours," Tova hurriedly replied. According to the time of the Magic Empire, the other party notified him in the evening. If tomorrow is punctual enough, then there is not much time left for them. Pass the order down immediately, enter the first-level alert defense state, and let the selected 3-star systems be ready for handover at any time, the supreme leader said solemnly. Just as the disk leaders were discussing, on the moon, a huge diamond-shaped battleship was hovering on a flat land. 1,000 carefully selected crew members have already prepared for this voyage, and Raphael is also among them. He is very curious about the method, Lin En said, but he can't bring himself to ask, so he just comes to watch. Lin En has no intention of hiding it. Seeing that the time is almost 0, he stretches out his right hand, and an illusory bottle is suspended in the palm of his hand. A faint red light can be seen spinning inside the bottle. "Isn't this the communication device we intercepted before?" Raphael finally remembered, and understood everything in an instant. Lin En smiled and nodded. A long time ago, he discovered that this thing is actually a stable coordinate, so it can continuously transmit messages to the geometric civilization dozens of light years away, and it will continue for thousands of years without interruption. The only problem is that to establish a stable channel, both sides need to have a huge energy source to distort time and space. The energy contained in this coordinate is very limited. The geometric civilization can only locate it through it, and there is no way to open the door directly, but they can use magic to solve this problem. As for the energy of the entangled particles on the other side, there is no need to worry. Probably to meet the needs of the interstellar battleships to return, the other party has placed energy furnaces for space-time transmission in many star systems in the territory, which are connected to the device for receiving coordinates. Lin En can feel the huge energy through the entangled particles, and they can completely use this in turn. After listening to Lin En's description, Raphael was amazed. and then hesitated for a moment and said, "But isn't this a bit too risky? Directly breaking into the opponent's territory, it is no joke to be besieged if things go wrong, and after leaving the divine domain, the power of the gods will be weakened and there is a risk of falling. Don't worry too much. The more arrogant we act, the less courage they will launch an attack," Lin En said with a smile. Since they have already greeted each other before, the probability of them being attacked is not high. This time he must go in person. After all, Ella is dead now, and the god-powered spacecraft is equivalent to losing energy and can no longer fly at superluminal speed, unless he, the god, takes over. Chapter 617. Don't be nervous, we are just here to borrow the road. The Great Universe, Unknown Galaxy, Second Candle Ever, Raven Star, Interstellar Protection and Security Affairs Office. After receiving the Level 1 alert message from the Mother World, ArchonNet immediately passed on the order. Could it be that those damn silicon-based monsters are attacking again? A senior adjutant with a triangular appearance asked worriedly. No, this time it's because of another thing, ArchonNet replied in denial. You should still remember the special signal we received some time ago, right? Lord Ned, are you talking about the signal sent by the exploration fleet? The senior adjutant immediately remembered it. They were also very surprised when they received this message. It has been more than 1,000 years since then. If it weren't for the record and the optical computer, they would have forgotten about it. Hearing that the Mother World has sent a fleet to explore, it should be here now. ArchonNet sighed and said, that signal was a trap. The fleet sent by the Mother World encountered an attack from a more powerful civilization and was almost wiped out. Only 4 main ships escaped. In order to avoid causing panic, this news is currently only spread among their level, and the lower-level civilians don't even know that there is such a war. The worst-case scenario is that a small-scale conflict breaks out on the border, which should not affect here, Ned said comfortingly, and several adjutants finally put down their worries. However, just a second after the voice fell, the ground under their feet suddenly began to shake violently, followed by a terrifying explosion. What's going on? ArchonNet rushed to the side and looked into the distance through the protective window. The giant energy generator that towered above the Earth was collapsing at a very fast speed. The terrible energy aftermath broke through the protective barrier like a tsunami, destroying everything around it. A dazzling red light lit up around Ned, which was a manifestation of extreme fear, because this energy generator stored a huge amount of antimatter. Once all of it exploded, the entire planet would be torn to pieces in an instant. Fortunately, this did not happen. The terrifying energy did not act directly on the planet but flew straight into the sky, tearing the azure sky apart. The red light around Ned was even more intense, because he had seen that someone was preparing to create a wormhole above this planet. War. This is war, Ned roared angrily. Send a message to the Mother World immediately and report the news here. In addition, prepare all space-based weapons. Attack immediately. Several adjutants immediately activated quantum communication. Thanks to the previous first-level combat readiness order, the protection system of the entire planet had already been activated. In fact, when the energy generator exploded, hundreds of space-based cannons had already aimed at the torn sky, and immediately began to accumulate energy after receiving the order. The black light of destruction condensed between the muzzles, and each hit was enough to destroy an asteroid. At this moment, a square geometric star suddenly broke into the Interstellar Protection and Security Affairs Office and spoke anxiously. Lord Ned, we just received a communication from an unknown direction. The other party said that they need to borrow a passage from here to receive 3 star systems that now belong to the Magic Empire. Borrow a passage? ArchonNet was obviously stunned for a moment, and after hearing about the Magic Empire, he immediately thought of something. On the other side, several adjutants in charge of the communication also spoke quickly. Lord Ned, the Mother World has sent a message back. The Supreme Leader told us not to attack first. While talking, above the torn sky, a huge diamond-shaped warship slowly emerged from the surging space-time vortex, and the space-based weapons hovering in the planetary orbit were ready to go. ArchonNet immediately grabbed the communicator and issued orders at the fastest speed. Stop attacking, everyone stop. No one is allowed to attack without my order. Is this the world controlled by interstellar civilization? In the warship that just jumped out of the space-time gate, the great wizard Ignar looked at the magnificent city projection projected on the light screen and said with emotion, "At this moment, they seem to be traveling through a huge steel jungle, or it would be more appropriate to describe it as an ocean of numbers." Various strange symbols and weird geometric figures appeared in front of them in the form of buildings, layer upon layer, towering into the clouds. The most eye-catching one was a huge circular building made of metal, which was suspended in the void without any support underneath. The energy consumed just to maintain this state was not a small amount. It can be seen that this civilization has reached the point of madness for geometry. However, the other crew members were obviously not in the mood to appreciate the strangeness and magnificence of the alien civilization, because thousands of protective ships had surrounded them, and hundreds of space-based cannons were pointed at the sky. The terrible destructive energy still made Igna and others feel hair stand on end even if they were separated by tens of thousands of kilometers. Lin En was not nervous, because the most dangerous moment was actually when they just came out of the wormhole. The other party might launch an attack due to unclear information or overreaction, so he specially sent a notice to the other party in advance to prevent this situation. Now that this difficulty has been passed, the other party has no reason to attack. The fact is just as Lin En expected. Although surrounded by heavy enemies, no defense ship dared to launch the first attack. The main ship driven by Lin En was like a lion stepping into the hyena territory on the grassland, and the surrounding defense ships were the hyenas that feared the power of the lion. They only dared to attack and watched from a distance. This sense of humiliation made every geometry starman who looked at this diamond-shaped battleship feel fear and anger. You must know that in the past 1,000 years, geometry civilization has only been in the first level alert state 3 times, all of which were related to the silicon-based civilization from another galaxy. And even in the most thrilling time, the opponent failed to completely break through the defense line. After a difficult resistance, the coalition forces composed of more than a dozen carbon-based civilizations successfully repelled those silicon-based monsters and kept the enemy out of the galaxy. And today, a warship from another civilization actually appeared in front of them. In the hinterland of the galaxy, they had no way to launch a counterattack due to orders, and could only watch the opponent march through the city group in a show of force. Chapter 618 The Frightened Geometric Civilization. After the initial worry, Igna quickly adjusted his mentality. After all, the other party only looked powerful, but they didn't dare to attack them at all. There was nothing to be afraid of. The surging space-time gate behind him slowly closed, and Lin En began to speed up. Before, he was traveling at the lowest speed to avoid hitting something strange after rushing into the space-time gate, causing damage to the spaceship. Now he didn't have these concerns. The space-time that was originally only slightly concave became more and more distorted. With the expansion of Lin En's divine domain, it affected not only the spaceship, but almost the entire city. The frigates surrounding the diamond-shaped spaceship were also affected. The crew members inside were horrified to find that the blocking line of sight and the perception of electromagnetic waves were seriously disturbed. The whole world seemed to be spinning non-stop, and the direction and time completely lost their meaning at this moment. Fortunately, this situation only lasted for a few seconds, and then the spaceship turned from extremely slow to extremely fast, and directly rushed out of the encirclement of thousands of protective ships. The dozens of frigates closest to them were directly torn to pieces by the surging space-time vortex. As the spacecraft truly entered superluminal speed, Lin En was completely relieved. Because the speed of light is the upper limit of the speed of low-dimensional space, at least most of the weapons currently displayed by the geometric civilization have lost their deterrent power in front of such a speed, and they are truly safe. Archon obviously knew this, but he had no way to do anything. He could only watch the other party leave and dejectedly asked his adjutant to transmit the images here back to the mother world. On the other side, the leaders of the discs who received the three-dimensional images looked at the collapsed energy towers and the dozens of frigates torn apart from the Riven Star, and they were both angry and extremely frightened. How dare they? This is clearly declaring war on us. A disc leader roared angrily. and the red light around him kept flashing, as dazzling as a fireball. The other leaders of the discs looked dejected. Why didn't the other party dare to do it when they had such technology? According to the news transmitted from the planet Riven, in addition to the ultra-long-distance space jump technology, the other party actually cracked their communication system. Before entering through the wormhole, they deliberately gave a friendly notice, but even so, thousands of civilians were killed and injured. What is the speed of this spaceship? Has it been measured? The Supreme Leader asked solemnly. Judging from the size and the long-distance space jump technology, this is probably the most advanced main ship of the Magic Empire. It is 1.5 times the speed of light, the messenger answered, paused, and then continued to speak in horror. No, the spaceship is still improving, and it is now twice the speed of light. Twice the speed of light. Hearing this, the group of geometricians present fell into an unspeakable silence, and only felt a tingling scalp, even though they had seen a detector with a speed of 1.5 times the speed of light in the interstellar war before. But it was just a detector after all, with a small mass and volume. According to common sense, the speed of the detector would be much faster than the ships used for combat. However, this common sense has been overturned now. In the last interstellar war, the power displayed by the other side was just the tip of the iceberg, but they mistakenly thought that the Magic Empire had already done its best. Since they have the ability to carry out long-distance delivery, why don't they go directly to these 3 star systems, but borrow the passage from here? Another leader who looked like an elliptical disc asked in confusion. It happened that the energy tower was also destroyed. He suspected that there should be some restrictions on opening this wormhole, but most leaders did not think so. In their view, this was a warning and a tough counterattack against their tentative attitude. It also represented a terrifying fact, that is, for the Magic Empire, distance is not a problem. As long as they want, they can strike at the heart of the geometric civilization at any time. Archon Tova also believed this. No wonder the other party was so casual during the negotiation, and even the delivery time was not set. Now it seems that they don't care and don't worry that they will go back on their word. Does the rest of the compensation need to be postponed? Tova asked carefully. The disc conference hall, which was originally full of colorful lights and arguments, fell silent again. They all understood that both the star system and the warships were just incidental to the compensation. What really interested the other party was probably the 7th element. Let's send the first batch of supplies as soon as possible, the Supreme Leader sighed. Although the other party suddenly rushed directly to the heartland of the geometric civilization this time, the damage caused was limited after all. They even sent a communication in advance, which was considered not to be completely torn apart. But if they continue to be ignorant of the times and wait for the other party's fleet to take it, they will probably not be so polite. How is your research on the shape of those diamond-shaped ships? Are there any new breakthroughs? The Supreme Leader looked at the group of cutting-edge scientific researchers who were invited. No gains for the time being, the designer who looked like a triangle said awkwardly. Because the warships of the Magic Empire were too strange. They used the optical brain to analyze it, and except for finding that the other party's curvature engine used a U-shaped curvature space structure, there was no substantial gain. There was no information about the weapon system of the spacecraft. The puzzled group of cutting-edge scientific researchers did not know that in order to avoid being analyzed and detected, the Parliament did not install any weapons on the spacecraft at all. If they encountered a meteor shower or disaster, they could only rely on Lin En, a god-level combat force, to deal with it. It would be a miracle if the optical brain could analyze it. On the other side, at twice the speed of light, a diamond-shaped battleship had successfully flown out of Ravenstar. The galaxy under the rule of geometric civilization looked very prosperous, not as empty as their star system. Hundreds of thousands of spacecraft shuttled between the planets, probably civilian ships for trade or transportation of supplies. The shining star was wrapped in a circle of huge energy extractors, and the surging fusion energy was absorbed and stored. I really don't know when such a grand occasion will appear on the eternal star, the great wizard Ignar said with a sigh. I believe it won't be long. Lin En said with certainty. Chapter 619. 100 years of hard work went up in flames. Sailing in the vast universe is extremely boring. There is nothing but darkness around. You can only see dots of light flashing in the distance. Each dot of light represents a star. This time, their goal is a star system 4 light years away. Fortunately, Lin En has already been promoted to the intermediate divine power. His control over space and dimensions has become more comprehensive. The speed of the spacecraft has once again reached a new milestone, twice the speed of light. But even so, it will take 2 full years to arrive. The only thing to be thankful for is that there is time difference between the inside and outside of the spacecraft. For them, they don't need to wait that long. According to Lin En's calculations, it will take about a month to arrive. During this month, Igna and others did not waste their time. They concentrated on studying the star map. Perhaps their luck was good. The whole journey was relatively calm, except for a large-scale vacuum meteorite shower. They did not encounter other cosmic disasters. The stars in front of them, which were flickering like faint sparks, are becoming larger and larger, which means that they are about to reach their destination. The wizards and the spaceship were very excited, because they were heading to a star field that would soon belong to them. After the distance between the two signs was only 100 million kilometers, Lin En gradually began to slow down, and the shining star finally appeared in front of everyone. Unlike the orange-yellow sun, the color of this star tends to be azure, which means that its surface temperature exceeds 10,000 degrees Celsius. A planet located at the innermost side of the galaxy orbit was too close, and its surface directly turned into surging lava, becoming a complete forbidden place for living things. However, this star system is certainly more than that. Otherwise the geometry civilization would not have the courage to take it out as compensation. There is another planet at the far end of the galaxy orbit, which happens to be in the habitable zone. The geometry civilization has even transformed it, which is very suitable for the survival and reproduction of carbon-based organisms. The battleship soon stopped in the station of this star of life. The 7 geometry stars had been waiting for a long time. When they saw Lin En and others coming out of the cabin, they hurried to greet them. "Respected Governor, I am the manager of the Planetary Ecology and Prevention Office. You can call me Money." The leading geometry starman communicated respectfully using electromagnetic waves. The order from the mother world had been issued more than a year ago. These civilizations that may come from higher dimensions must be treated with the highest courtesy, as long as the other party does not make too outrageous demands. They must be satisfied. This was an order issued by the Supreme Leader himself. Money naturally did not dare to be negligent. After welcoming Lin En and others into the station, he asked someone to bring up 2 spheres the size of a human head. "Governor, these are the coordinates of the other 2 star systems. As long as they are activated, they can open the corresponding wormholes." Originally, the leaders wanted to send a fleet to you, but they didn't expect that you would take action before they could set off. Manager Money said very tactfully that they did not intentionally conceal it in the previous negotiations, and because the distance was too far, they did not deliver it in time. Although the Magic Empire has demonstrated the ability to carry out long-distance precision delivery without exact coordinates, others do not have to. But they cannot not give it. This is a matter of attitude. Since it's just a misunderstanding, I'm relieved. Lin En smiled and nodded. He understood that the previous move was right. His extremely arrogant attitude and the ability to crack communications and teleport over long distances that he inadvertently showed successfully aroused the fear of the geometric civilization. With these 2 coordinates, they no longer have to rely on spacecraft to sail to receive the other 2 star systems. The universe is really too big. Twice the speed of light seems very fast, but the distance that needs to be crossed is also in light years. Moreover, when he just left the spacecraft, Lin En found that he could no longer sense the communication stations set up by the geometric civilization on various planets through the intercepted communication coordinates. This means that the other party has upgraded the communication system again, which also means that he can no longer rely on the communication coordinates to open the space-time gate as before. It can only be said that the other party is very sensible and the things are delivered at the right time. Lin En stretched out his hand and two spheres the size of a human head were suspended in front of him as if they were pulled, and then they were broken up and restored to elementary particles under the great disintegration technique. He dared not use the things offered by the other party at will, even if the probability of the geometry civilization tampering with it was very low. He had to be on guard. And as long as the coordinates were enough, they did not lack energy. Manager Money stared at the scene of Lin En casting a spell, trying to see something, but in the end he got nothing. In the 2 years since Lin En and others sailed from Raven Star, Geometry Civilization also came up with many guesses based on the intelligence collected before. After seeing the power of the Magic Empire, the leaders were even considering whether to let scientific researchers turn to the research of energy ascension technology. This is a complete sublimation of life form. From the power of the high-dimensional war weapons of the Magic Empire, it can be seen that after transforming oneself into an energy form, one will gain a strong control over the microcosm in time and space, so one can do all kinds of incredible things without relying on any instruments. It can be said that one person is a powerful interstellar battleship. Complex thoughts kept flashing in his mind, but while thinking secretly, Manager Money did not forget the business, and introduced the situation inside the galaxy to Lin En and others. This is a newborn planet of life, numbered 1700. This newborn planet is not just formed, but the initial ecological transformation was completed not long ago. Before that, it was a barren planet without any vitality. They drove a spaceship tirelessly and dragged an ice comet of the right size from a light year away, letting it hit this planet, and spread film materials in the sky to form an atmosphere to prevent water loss and the impact of stellar storms. The last and most important thing is to establish an ecosystem. Even with the technological level of geometric civilization, it took nearly 70 years to establish the general ecosystem of the entire planet. As a result, before they had time to really colonize, they were thrown out by the leaders of the disk as war compensation. The resentment in the heart of the administrator Money was extremely deep. They spent nearly 100 years of hard work and had to give it up like this. Chapter 620, A Big Deal, The Planetary Ranch Plan. Despite the constant resentment in his heart, facing the envoys of these high-dimensional civilizations, the administrator Money did not dare to show his dissatisfaction in his heart, and led everyone to visit the station that was just built 10 years ago. The area of this station is not large, only about 100,000 square kilometers. It is built on a plain, and the interior is still the architectural style with a geometric aesthetic. Every time Lin En saw this building full of squares, triangles, circles and various symbols, he couldn't help but want to complain in his heart. But it is obvious that with the technological level of geometric civilization, it does not care about the so-called energy loss and space utilization. Of course, it is as happy as it can be. Money led everyone all the way to the main hall, and gorgeous light screens were projected on the walls on all 4 sides, showing scenes from all over the planet. The great wizard Ignor's eyes swept across the vast number of light screens, and his strong computing power and excellent eyesight saw the scenes one by one. In the dense jungle, a ferocious beast suddenly rushed out and threw a herbivore that looked like a deer to the ground, locked its neck tightly, and strangled it on the spot. However, before it could enjoy this gluttonous feast, it was intercepted by a dozen short forest beasts and fled in panic after a fierce battle. On the snow-capped mountain, a huge bird flew down and killed the fleeing prey in its claws. The scene of the survival of the fittest appeared in every part of the light screen, and all this was under the remote control of the geometric civilization. Money said very complacently that on this planet, there are more than 500,000 micro-detectors, which can monitor anything happening in any area in real time. The great wizard Ignor was shocked by the means of the geometric civilization. In a sense, Money and others are the creators of the creatures in this world. It is unimaginable that they can turn a barren planet into a world full of life in just over 70 years. Lin En is also very interested in this technology. It is not an easy task to build an ecosystem for an entire planet. In his previous life, When he traveled through time, the Federation had also created a planetary ecosystem, but the technology was obviously not perfect. How to maintain stability between species is a very troublesome problem. You have to know that creating an ecosystem is not as simple as releasing a few wolves and deer, but involves millions of species. The most difficult thing is to establish a community of microorganisms. Forests, mountains, grasslands, wetlands, freshwater, and marine ecosystems are not the same. Even if you can use quantum computers to mimic them in advance, it is difficult to achieve perfection because there are too many variables. A little emission will cause a domino-like collapse, causing the death of a large number of biological communities, not to mention completing such a difficult ecological transformation in other star systems. The technology of the geometry civilization is obviously very mature. It only takes 30 ships and 2,000 people to colonize a star system. Lin En guessed that the other two star systems should be in a similar situation. Although the geometry civilization promised them that there would be a star of life in each star system, from the current situation, most of them are planets that have just completed the ecosystem and have not had time to colonize. However, this is not all bad. If the other party really cedes important territories and lets them rule a large number of highly civilized geometry people, this is really a bad thing. Reality is not a game. It is more than 100 times more difficult to rule a group of aliens with completely different cultures, languages, ethnic groups and even shapes than to occupy them alone. What's more, they are completely empty shells. If they are caught because of poor management, they will be finished. The technology of building an ecosystem displayed by the geometry civilization also gave Lin En some new ideas. Perhaps it can quickly improve their strength and solve their relatively lacking magic problem. While Lin En was thinking, Money had already taken them into the main control room and explained the various instructions and methods of operating the monitors. Originally, according to the idea of the leaders of the disk, all the technological facilities of the entire planet should be dismantled and taken away, or thrown into the star to be burned, to avoid the leakage of technology. Leaving a life star to complete the agreement is enough. But 2 years ago, the Magic Empire opened a portal in Raven Star directly because of their slight probing, causing thousands of deaths and injuries to Geometry Star people. Such an obvious warning made the leaders of the disk hesitate, and they could only leave these facilities, comforting themselves in their hearts that the other party would probably look down on these low-end technologies, and there was no need for them to waste their efforts. After completing the handover, Money planned to take people away, but was stopped by Lin En. Next, I plan to build a planetary ranch here to experiment with the Empire's latest energy biological transformation technology. Since the ecosystem of this planet was built by you, why not stay and study it together? Although this planetary ranch plan was Lin En's temporary idea, it is also very important. Although the Parliament had successfully stabilized the powerful Geometry civilization and repelled the invasion of the gods of the main world with the help of the other party's power, there is no risk of extinction for the time being, but its own strength is still far behind these two opponents. Now there are 3 more galaxies under the rule of the Magic Empire. The most indispensable thing has become magic power. After all, this is the most important thing to build the god's domain. Over the years, Lin En has also had some clues about the research on magic power. Matter and energy can be transformed into each other. Although magic power comes from another universe, it also follows this law. The medium is the soul. Lin En does not intend to rely on faith to continuously harvest the souls of intelligent life like the gods in the main world to transform divine power. Now the ecosystem created by the Geometry civilization has given him new inspiration. If they want souls, they can use the advanced genetic modification technology of the Geometry civilization combined with magic power to cultivate a group of powerful monsters with fast growth and rapid iteration, and the survival of the fittest in a natural state. Every dead creature will be collected by the god's domain and transformed into magic power. This will not only save trouble but also promote the emergence of powerful individuals. This is the so-called planetary ranch plan. Lin En's sudden invitation surprised the Geometry Star people present and made them a little moved. They were very interested in the energy biological transformation technology mentioned by Lin En. because the scientific researchers in the mother world are secretly researching the technology of energy ascension. If we stay here, we may be able to obtain some key technical intelligence. If you are listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelist. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We are waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 621. This is simply a miracle in the history of biological evolution. Under the invitation of Lin En and the temptation of observing the biological transformation technology, the manager Money hesitated for a moment and then led a group of geometric stars to stay, intending to learn the technology in private. Lin En, who had other plans, naturally didn't care much. After learning about the topography, location and other information of the planet through the optical brain, he didn't delay any longer and reached a snowy mountain in one step. This is the highest place on the entire planet and the place where the ice comet fell. It is covered by glaciers and snow. At first glance, it looks like a white dead place, but Lin En can perceive the vitality covered by glaciers and snow. In the area where the temperature is below -20 degrees, there are still tens of millions of creatures living in this area, forming a complete ecological cycle. But today is obviously going to change. Lin En closed his eyes and began to sense the position of the eternal star. Although the two sides were separated by a distance of 70 light years, that was his divine domain. The connection between the two was enough to cross the barriers of time and space. Unless one entered the main world, one could clearly sense the existence of the eternal star anywhere in this galaxy. In other words, he and the divine domain formed two clear high-dimensional coordinates, which could become the medium to open the space-time gate. This was one of the reasons why Lin En needed to come here in person. About 10 seconds later, Lin En opened his eyes, stretched out his hand and tapped lightly in the void. It was like throwing a stone on a calm water surface. Under the higher dimensional horizon, the stable space-time curve began to ripple, and with the input of energy, it became more and more intense, and finally twisted to form a space-time vortex. In recent research, Lin En also figured out some characteristics of magic power, such as when it is not restricted, it always spontaneously flows from a high concentration to a low concentration until a relative balance is reached. So he didn't even need to actively guide it. A huge amount of magic power surged out from the inside and rushed to this new world, infecting everything around it from a microscopic level. Whether it was the white snow or the hard rocks covered below, or the dust floating in the air, all matter was included. But this speed was still too slow. It would take at least 10 years to completely cover the entire planet at this rate. Lin En took another step, and with a flash of his figure, he appeared in every corner of the planet, opening the time and space gates leading to the eternal star at 21 fixed points such as the sea, plains, and jungles. The speed of the magic power influx increased by more than 10 times in an instant. However, the magic power concentration of the eternal star will continue to decrease. Fortunately, they conquered the foreign land and plundered all the matter and energy there. In addition, the fall of a god raised the magic power concentration of the eternal star to an astonishing level. The prophet should be able to complete the assimilation of the second planet. A steady stream of magic power poured out from more than 20 time and space gates. Silently, this life star, which had been formed for only more than 10 years, ushered in an unprecedented transformation. In the hidden jungle, a fleeing pig beast was bitten on the neck by a ferocious predator. When it was about to die, it suddenly burst out with powerful strength, broke free from its restraints, and pierced the latter's abdomen with its long fangs. A deer that was leisurely grazing on the plain suddenly burst into strong flames. Although magic power has just entered this world, some exceptional individuals who can adapt to magic power have already begun to evolve first, and the originally stable ecosystem has been instantly broken. Lin En saw everything that happened, and at the same time, he also sensed the micro-detector of the geometric civilization. This instrument is very small, only about 1 millimeter long and wide. It is hard to imagine how such a thing can complete various complex tasks. Fortunately, he will know soon, as Lin En's mind turned. Hundreds of thousands of detectors covered by the magic field disintegrated in an instant and were reassembled and restored. The whole process only lasted about 10 seconds, but the internal information was already under Lin En's control. These detectors were built using some quantum-level micro-carving technology. Although they looked small in size, they had more than 2 trillion tiny circuits inside that could not be seen even with a super-high magnifying glass. They could observe and collect the surrounding scenes by capturing specific electromagnetic wavelengths, and convert them into corresponding images to be projected onto the light screen in the control room. Is this the power of high-dimensional creatures? At the same time, in the main control room, seeing Lin En casually opening 21 wormholes on the planet, the manager Money and a group of geometry stars were terrified, and also noticed the drastic changes in some creatures. Is it a gas catalyst that can promote genetic modification? Money subconsciously thought of this, because geometry civilization has similar technology, which allows carbon-based life forms in it to iterate and evolve in the direction they expect in a short period of time by releasing growth-stimulating gases. However, Mooney soon discovered that this was not as simple as a gas catalyst, because some of the infected creatures showed illogical abilities, such as stepping on flames, lightning flashing around their bodies, or being able to float in the air for a short time. The analysis of the optical brain also confirmed this point. The air was filled with an extremely special energy that was not recorded in the database. Quick, let the detectors get closer, and then put a batch of atomic-level biological transformation machines into the bodies of these creatures. Find out as soon as possible what changes have occurred in their organs and how that special energy can do this, Mooney said excitedly. This is simply a miracle in biology. The rest of the geometry stars immediately got busy and called up the control light screen, ready to execute the orders of the administrator Mooney. However, after some operations, the detectors distributed all over the planet did not move at all, and the orders they issued had no effect. After receiving the report, Mooney couldn't believe it and called up the authority of the optical brain, only to find that these detectors had been completely out of their control without knowing it. Mooney suddenly remembered that just after Lin En opened all the portals, the light screen projection of the detector was suddenly interrupted for a while. Mooney didn't pay much attention to it at that time, thinking that it was the interference of energy fluctuations that blocked the transmission of electromagnetic waves. Now it seems that it was at that time that the other party used some unknown method to seize control of the detector. Chapter 622 The Creator and Creation. The sudden loss of control over the monitors made Money and the others' enthusiasm plummet to the bottom. However, they knew that with such cutting-edge technology, how could the other party allow them to study it at will without any protective or supervisory measures? Now the Magic Empire has controlled all the monitors and cut off the communication system, which is equivalent to putting them under house arrest on this planet. Money suddenly regretted that he should not have agreed rashly, but now it is obviously impossible to regret it. On the other side, Lin En, who stood on the sea, spent 2 days and 1 night to expand the God's domain to every corner of this planet. Of course, this is just a rough coverage of the God's domain on this planet. The concentration of magic power is abnormally low, mainly used to stop magic power from pouring into the vast universe. If you want to really infect the entire planet, or even go deep into the core of the Earth, you must wait until more magic power pours in from the eternal star, which will take at least half a year. After completing this preliminary work, Lin En did not intend to stay and went straight back to the main control room. Lin En suddenly disappeared and reappeared, which made Money secretly note in his heart that the Magic Empire might have mastered the technology of wormhole miniaturization. I have spread a kind of energy that can promote biological evolution everywhere on the planet. Next, you have 2 tasks. The first is to accelerate the evolution of these creatures and promote the emergence of legends. Well, that is, energy life forms. The second is to cultivate a kind of, a group of powerful monsters with pleasing growth and rapid iteration. Lin En was not at all shy and directly gave the task. His strong attitude made a group of geometry stars feel under great pressure. As the leader, Money had no choice but to speak under pressure. Governor, the restrictions of the Mother World on biological transformation technology are very strict. Some of the technologies may require application to the mother world before they can be used. Money's words were not all excuses. In fact, it is not just the geometry civilization. Many galaxy-level civilizations that have mastered high-end biological transformation technology have similar restrictions. In the universe, there are also examples of creator being killed by the intelligent creatures or even digital life forms created by them. Therefore, in order to prevent the fleets sent out to construct the planet's ecosystem from messing around and creating potential threats, some restrictions are usually imposed. Lin En pondered for a while, and then agreed to let money conduct the communication, but asked to keep the research results confidential for the time being, and he would have someone monitor the communication. Hearing this, Money breathed a sigh of relief. What he was most worried about was that he would be killed after the work was done. Now that the other party did not stop them from communicating with the mother world, the situation should not be the worst. Lin En informed Money and others of the modified instructions for operating the detector, and then let them start the research and report the data every 10 days. Mr. Speaker, are you just going to let them study magic like this? After walking out of the main control room, the Great Wizard Igna asked worriedly. Magic power is their important bargaining chip to deceive and intimidate the geometry civilization. If they let the other party conduct research like this, it would be difficult if they were exposed or found something. Lin En smiled and did not explain. He asked Money and others to participate in the research on biological transformation, which was not just because he was interested in the other party's technology and experience in this field. He believed that the preliminary research on magic power would definitely make the geometry civilization more certain of their identity as a high-dimensional civilization, because this special energy can almost affect all matter and energy, and even more mysterious dimensions. The magic empire now seems to be backward, just because the time given to them is too short, and they have not been able to bring the magic of magic to its fullest. As for the problem of a small amount of magic power leaking, it is not a big deal. To a certain extent, the magic power in the god's domain is a part of his body. If the other party conducts research in private, what results can be achieved depends only on the characteristics of the magic power he is willing to reveal, and he can even mess around to disrupt the other party's research ideas. If the other party chooses to take the same approach as them and rely on magic to transform themselves into energy life forms, it would be even better, which is equivalent to being under their control. However, it is not the time to provoke now. It is just a bait first. So Lin En restricted the communication between Money and others and the mother world. When their strength is strong enough in the future, there may be a harvest. After comforting the Great Wizard Igna and asking him to pay more attention to monitoring these geometric stars, Lin En took a dozen alchemists to the spacecraft docking in the station. Just now, when he was expanding the divine domain, he noticed that there were a total of 30 interstellar-class warships on this planet, 20 of which were compensation prepared by the geometric civilization, and the remaining 10 were engineering ships for planetary transformation. Considering that Money and others did not need to use them for the time being, Lin En prepared to pack them all up and take them back for research. According to the time of the Eternal Star, their previous voyage took a full 2 years. I don't know how the Magic Kingdom is developing now. It's time to go back and take a look. Magical Universe, Main Plane. After several months of fermentation, the news of the failure of the cross-border war has already spread, and it has caused an uproar among the gods. You must know that this war was launched by the main god Amaragis, with 6 gods such as Thunder, Fire, Disaster, Sky, Order, and Space as the vanguard, and even the main god personally took action, but the final result ended in a miserable defeat. The 6 gods who went to the new plane all fell, and none of them were spared. Even the main god Amaragis was severely injured. This can be seen from the natural disasters that have continuously erupted in the main plane in recent months. The god of life and creation, who had escaped the disaster by chance, secretly rejoiced. After witnessing the fall of the god of lies in a foreign land, he realized that those so-called wizards were not so easy to deal with, so he decisively found a reason to choose to retreat to the second line and gave up this precious opportunity to gain credit. Otherwise he would have fallen by now. Even the great god Harry could not escape, and he did not think he could survive. However, it was undoubtedly too early to rejoice now, because the God of life and creation soon sensed the call from the pantheon again. The God of life and creation sighed helplessly. He knew that he had no choice but to hope that he would not be the unlucky one this time. Chapter 623. Believe me, that must be their full strength. In the gap between the main plane and the endless void, a huge palace stands here. In the epics passed down by the right people, this is the residence of the gods. However, the records in the epics are obviously untrue, because normally no god would be willing to come here, unless they are summoned by the main god. One after another, light and shadows appear in this eternally bright palace, and each light and shadow represents a god. The god of life and creation arrived here early, facing the invitation of the main god. He naturally did not dare to neglect it at all. However, before coming, he did not expect that the scene would be so grand this time. More than 100 gods from the main plane are all here. This means that they will also arrive. As this thought emerged from the mind of the god of life and creation, ripples suddenly appeared in the time and space in the palace, and a terrifying pressure began to emerge in the hearts of every god. Everyone realized that the Lord God had come. As expected, 3 huge black shadows appeared out of thin air in the deepest part of the hall. They did not appear from any direction, but from illusion to reality, just like crossing the barrier of time, from the future and the past to the present. The God of life and creation subconsciously glanced at the Lord God on the right, His Majesty Maragus. It was rumored that this transcendent existence was severely damaged, but the Maragus who appeared in front of them looked as usual, as if the rumors were false. However, the successive natural disasters in the main plane were real. Just as the gods were thinking secretly, the god of harvest and fertility asked first, "Your Majesty, did you summon us here for something important to tell us? I think you should have heard that the last war against the new plane did not turn out well. Now the priesthoods of thunder, war, fire, disaster, sky, order, and space are all vacant." The Lord God Maragus said directly. Even though they had been prepared, the gods who were confirmed to be present were still horrified. Some gods with weaker powers could not help but feel a little fear. If the lies, the dead and the priesthood of the moon were added, there were already 9 gods who had fallen in the war with the new plane. "Your Majesty Maragus, are the wizards in the new plane really that powerful?" the god of life and creation asked in a deep voice. This time, 6 gods were dispatched together, including great gods like Hari, and even the Lord God personally took action. "The power of those wizards is indeed beyond our expectations." Maragus' voice echoed throughout the hall. "The alchemical creations they made can even rival the gods." Of course, the most important thing is that Hari and others who entered were all tricked, according to their previous expectations, with the help of the residual soul left by the new moon god to connect to the body. They can open the time and space gate and launch a successful raid. However, the result was the exact opposite. When the 6 gods arrived, what awaited them was a fleet that had been prepared in advance and a star destroyer cannon that had been fired in advance. This was undoubtedly a trap. The new moon god had probably deliberately left the soul to lure them into the trap. The most important thing was to let him do it himself. Once a god leaves his own divine domain, his strength will be greatly reduced. This is true for ordinary gods, and the main gods also have the same limitations. Moreover, because of their overpowering power, it is even more difficult to cross the 2 realms. Based on this, the other party chose to launch a sneak attack the moment his true body stepped into the new plane. Maragus was stuck halfway and could not dodge or exert much strength. He could only resist with great frustration. That's when one of his arms was torn by the secret weapons carefully prepared by those wizards. After Maragus' explanation, the gods in the temple breathed a sigh of relief. Those wizards from the new plane did not win the victory on the front battlefield, but relied on underhanded means to repel the attack of the Lord God. It was not as terrible as they thought. The god of harvest and fertility even believed that in order to deal with the war with the main plane, those wizards had gone all out and used all means, so that they needed to sacrifice the new moon god to achieve their goals. This conclusion was also recognized by most of the gods. If the other party really had the ability to compete with the main plane, There was no need to give up the captured moon god realm and withdraw to their own nests. While the gods were discussing, Moragos brought out a piece of good news at the right time. He personally stepped into the new plane in the last war and found that they had underestimated the size of this plane. Even though his perception was not able to reach the edge and measure the dimensional distance, it was certain that this was not just a large plane, but a super-large world that could rival the main plane. A world that could rival the main plane? How is that possible? The god of wisdom and knowledge said in disbelief. In their cognition, the main plane was the center of the void, the largest world, so much so that there had always been rumors among the gods that the other planes were once part of the main plane, but were separated for some unknown reason. But the probability that Moragos lied to them was very small, which meant that this was most likely true. Realizing this, the gods present became very excited. They knew very well what a world as big as the main plane meant. It meant a huge amount of resources, which could carry more gods, and it was even possible for several main gods to be born again. With the fall of the 9 gods, their priesthoods and kingdoms also became ownerless. These are the steps to ascend. It can be said that if they can dominate that world, every god present can benefit from it. However, some more rational gods felt a chill in their hearts. The god of life and creation is one of them. Since they learned about this new plane, their cognition has been constantly refreshed. After each war, the strength rating of those wizards will be raised. The last war may not be all the power that the other side has. What kind of terrifying existence will derive from such a huge world? A great war that caused the gods to fall and destroyed countless divine domains suddenly emerged in the mind of a god of life and creation. However, this may not be an opportunity to get rid of the control of the Lord God. Chapter 624, 1 month on the boat, 2 years on Earth. In the Eternal Star, Magic Kingdom, Planetary Protection and Dimension Monitoring Office, the great wizard Theodore, who was slacking off and drinking coffee, was telling the apprentices who had just graduated from the Magic Academy and were sent to do odd jobs about his great achievements in the wizard land. So you have seen the Magic Star with your own eyes and talked to him face to face, Lord Theodore? A witch asked with both surprise and some doubt. The other apprentices also looked at Theodore excitedly. As the gravedigger of the Empire and the Church, the controller of the Magic Network, and the founder of the Magic Kingdom, Lin En was beyond the mundane and even dimensional existence. He was undoubtedly the object of admiration of all apprentices and wizards. Especially the popular movie last month pushed the reputation of the Magic Star to the highest peak. Of course, Theodore nodded complacently, and said when he saw that everyone present was really interested. It was more than 10 years ago. At that time, Speaker Lin was being hunted by the church, so he took the knowledge and heritage of the secret society, and sailed to the port of Yaita. I happened to work under the great wizard Helram, responsible for shipping and the review of outsiders. Theodore told everyone this story with great pride. If you really want to count it, he should be the first wizard in the wizard land who has come into contact with Speaker Lin. He also witnessed how he rose from a formal wizard to become the supreme ruler of the parliament. The apprentices who had just graduated from school were naturally excited. They had just learned about the great achievements of the Magic Star in spreading knowledge in the empire, revealing the truth, and fighting against the evil church forces in the cinema last month. Even when facing the pursuit of more than a dozen bishops and cardinals, Lin En, who was just a formal wizard at the beginning, was still at ease. In the end, he defeated the pursuers in the harbor town on the border of the empire and killed thousands of the empire's elite guards. It is rumored that a cardinal launched a divine descent to reverse the situation. Now Theodore's narration undoubtedly directly connected the plot. Just as he was about to continue spoiling, a strong alarm suddenly rang out. Theodore's face suddenly changed and he spoke anxiously. Dimensional fluctuations have been detected. Everyone, cheer up and notify the speakers immediately. Maybe the gods of the main world are calling. This dimensional inspection system covering the entire planet is the latest work of the Magic Research Institute. To put it bluntly, it can sense abnormal spatial fluctuations in the area, which is usually a precursor to opening the space-time gate. On the other side, the parliament that received the communication also responded immediately. 15 Galaxy-class battleships and 20 legendary speakers were dispatched together, and thousands of annihilation cannons had adjusted their muzzles and pointed them at the sky. Fortunately, soon, with the arrival of a quantum communication, and others relaxed their worries and became overjoyed. It was Lin En and others who went to the heart of the geometric civilization who came back. About 3 seconds later, a diamond-shaped warship flew out of the surging space-time gate, followed by the second, third, and fourth. After a month, the kingdom has changed a lot. Inside the spaceship, an alchemist looked at the city scene projected on the light screen and said with emotion, "I remember that the last time I came here, the capital was not so big, right? The changes in the capital are not just as simple as being big. There is even a new city with a larger area built next to it, but the interior is empty and there are many huge signs erected. It doesn't look like it is used for living. It's just 1 month for us, but it's already 2 years for the outside world," another alchemist corrected. When in a foreign land, many people have experienced the difference of 7 times the speed of time. But now it has suddenly increased to 20 times, and they are still a little uncomfortable. Fortunately, it was only a month. If they stayed on the spaceship for several years, they would not know what the kingdom would look like when they returned. Lin En was not surprised by the changes in the kingdom, although he had also spent more than a month on the spaceship. The eternal star was his divine domain. Of course, he could not be ignorant of what was happening inside. All the information would be transmitted to his mind at dozens of times the speed. The reply from the kingdom was quickly conveyed, asking them to go to the interstellar port to dock according to the instructions. The crew members realized that the new city erected next to the capital was actually the new interstellar port established by the parliament. It was expected to accommodate 50 Galaxy-class warships and provide inspection, maintenance and energy replenishment services. Under the strong watch of countless people in the capital, more than 30 huge warships with a diameter of more than 5 kilometers hovered in the port one by one. The nearby areas were set up with anti-force field magic, otherwise there would be no floor tiles that could withstand the terrifying mass of the warships. And others were also waiting in the interstellar port and immediately came to greet them. Chairman Lin En, did everything go smoothly on this trip to the heartland of geometry civilization? Since 2 years ago, when Lin En and his party opened the time-space gate to the territory of geometry civilization, they have been in a semi-disconnected state. Although Lin En can receive information from the outside world due to the connection with the god's domain, the time flow speed on both sides is inconsistent, making communication inconvenient. The harvest is not bad. Much richer than we expected. Lin En showed a smile on his face, and roughly talked about his plan to build a planetary ranch. By the way, he asked the parliament to send some wizards to the New World to assist those geometry people in the improvement and research of magic beasts. Using an entire planet as a ranch and artificially cultivating magic beasts through genetic technology, Lin En's generosity once again made her and others feel amazed. However, this has solved the most troublesome problem of the parliament at present. Due to the comprehensive popularization of magic education and the improvement of the magic network, the number of wizards is increasing day by day, and the number of users of the magic network has also increased to a full 1.5 million. Of course, most of these more than 1 million people are just apprentices, and the number of formal wizards is less than 1/10. Even so, the resources consumed are astronomical. In recent years, the prices of alchemy and potion materials have skyrocketed, and the large-scale breeding bases they have built cannot meet the demand at all. Lin En's planetary ranch plan can perfectly solve this problem. Chapter 625 Element 7 and Higher Dimensional Matter. Using the entire world as a pasture for breeding monsters? Isn't this too wasteful? Although the planetary pasture plan proposed by Lin En was very shocking and could solve the most troublesome problem of the current parliament, Raphael and others still felt that it was a bit inappropriate. That's a whole planet of life. A planet is nothing. Lin En naturally saw the doubts of the crowd and couldn't help but said with a smile, "Don't forget, the geometry civilization has given us 3 star systems, and there are at least 2 life planets like this. If they can master the corresponding ecological transformation technology, or obtain life or create a kind of priesthood, They can also transform other planets in the system, so the life planet is too rich for them, and the empire simply does not have enough people to colonize. The population of the kingdom is still too small. Lin En said with a sigh. In the past 1,000 years, under the rule of the empire and the church, the total number of people in this continent is about 20 million. Thanks to their lightning-fast ending of the war that swept the continent, the population did not decrease on a large scale, but increased a lot. The increase in population is mainly the liberated slaves and hidden households. They were not counted in the empire's statistics before, but now it is naturally different. All those who have suffered from the oppression of the nobles and the church are the most loyal subjects of the kingdom. In addition to the barbarians who were incorporated into the north and the halflings who fled from foreign lands, the population has increased by about 5 million again. However, in the past 10 years, fertility is the main cause of population growth. Due to the linear improvement of living standards and the lack of protective measures, the number of births has soared all the way like a rocket propeller, and the population has naturally also caused a surge, soaring from 25 million to 60 million. The population has almost doubled in more than 10 years. This is undoubtedly a terrifying speed, but it is very normal. Roughly speaking, the average annual growth rate is only 9%. In fact, if it were not for the tight work schedule, it would not be a problem to add a few million more people to the population. Under the child labor system of the empire, the first batch of children in their teens can already participate in work. These newly added laborers who have received basic education have largely made up for the gap in technical workers. Even so, in Lin En's opinion, it is still far from enough. If you want to support a huge galaxy civilization, a population of 10 billion is not enough, and 100 billion is just barely enough. The population growth rate must continue to accelerate. In fact, you can consider using some rewards or honors to encourage childbirth. Lin En combined the policies that encouraged childbirth in his previous life to give suggestions to prevent others. If he remembered correctly, in the era when agricultural civilization was gradually moving towards industrial civilization in his previous life, some countries even achieved a natural population growth rate of more than 20% per year. It only took 16 years from a population of 60 million to 1 billion. This is the horror of exponential growth. Anyway, they don't need to worry about the problem of insufficient resources now. Of course, the more people, the better. If they wait until the rise of humanistic thought, it would be a fantasy to have such fertility again. By the way, Speaker Lin En, Vittorio on the side seemed to have thought of something and spoke quickly. Just a month ago, those geometry people sent 2 warships to hand over part of the compensation. During that time, Lin En happened to be out of contact, and suddenly found that the fleet of geometry civilization appeared in the galaxy, which scared them. Fortunately, it was found out that it was just a false alarm. Element 7? Lin En paused, and soon guessed what the handover compensation was, and immediately became interested. He had seen the so-called Element 7 in the memories of some geometry people, but the search was not done in the minds of scientific researchers, so he only got some basic information. However, geometry civilization has always kept it hidden, and they almost fought because of it during the previous negotiations. This is enough to prove the importance of Element 7. It is something that even galaxy-level civilizations regard as a treasure. This is why he specifically asked Raphael to ask for it during the negotiations. Have you found anything in this month? Lin En asked curiously. Vittorio's face suddenly became a little strange. This element is very strange. It seems to have no fixed form. We have used many methods but cannot accurately calculate its mass and volume. Even the great disintegration technique cannot break it. Vittorio's words made Lin En more interested. He immediately postponed the original reception process and went to the place where the element number 7 was placed to take a look. The parliament obviously knew the importance of this thing, so after completing the handover with a fleet of the geometry civilization, it was placed at the bottom of the sky tower, and the guards were very strict. About half an hour later, Lin En passed through a door engraved with runes and saw the long-awaited element number 7. It was a massive matter only the size of a fist, glowing slightly. Just as Vittorio said, the shape kept changing. At the same time, Lin En also noticed that the surrounding space had also undergone subtle changes. This did not seem to be a twist caused by mass, but a more profound impact. Rev, who was most knowledgeable about element number 7, couldn't help but speak. I found that this thing seems to be somewhat similar to the Godhead. I suspect that it is very likely a kind of high-dimensional matter. Lin En took over Rev's words and agreed with this point of view. He instantly understood why the geometric civilization attached so much importance to it. Ordinary high-dimensional matter is not a rare thing, because microscopic particles have high-dimensional properties. In a sense, all matter has more than 3 dimensions, but the universe seems to have some kind of limitation. Once these microscopic particles are arranged and aggregated into macroscopic matter, they lose their original high-dimensional properties. Element number 7 is different. Its volume is trillions of times that of microscopic particles, but it can still exist in a high-dimensional form. This special feature is its value. Lin En stretched out his hand, and under the traction of magic, element number 7, which was suspended at the bottom of the tower, floated over and landed in his palm. Then a large amount of divine power wrapped in will poured into it, and soon Lin En noticed the difference. If the divine power is compared to a stream of water, then this palm-sized mass of matter is like a bucket that cannot be filled. It continuously receives water but there is no sign of filling up. End of this chapter. Thank you very much for reaching the end. Don't forget to like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription, or donation encourages us to continue. Thanks to everyone. See you in the next video.